I finally hit that live button. A few minutes late, but I think it's fine. I think we're live now, so welcome everyone. This is On Just Restart. I am joined by Dumo from Dumoplays and Brandon from WhataboutNodnarb. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Good. Yeah, we're ready to talk about Monster Hunter. My first experience with a
Oh
full
man,
Monster Hunter game.
man, it's gonna be great. Oh man, I'm excited. I feel like Monster Hunter Rise, and this is not the topic for topics. We're gonna talk about Monster Hunter Rise today. A lot of Monster Hunter Rise because it's really, really good, and it just came out, and it's really good. But also, we're gonna be talking about this Bloomberg report, another one that came out that is kind of giving us more of an indication of what's gonna be in the system, the hardware, like it's going to be like a new chipset and stuff, and pricing is discussed. So we're going to be talking about that as well. But we're also going to be jumping into a little bit of speculation in terms of when we're going to be seeing like actual Zelda news, because there's been a lot of discussion about how Mario is dying on March 31st. So that sort of leads people to believe that once Nintendo is done with Mario's anniversary plans, that they will transition to Zelda. Maybe. So we're going to be talking about that as well tonight. And of course, if you guys have any other points to bring up in the chat, we will get to those as well. But yeah, this is a Nintendo podcast. We do it every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, approximately. But anyway, what I just wanted to say before we really dive into things, I'm in love with Monster Hunter Rise. Like, it is just so good. The background music, hopefully you guys can hear it, is from Kamara Village, the actual hub town, and I fall asleep to this music. Like, it is just so soothing and cool, and I love it. This game is great. We're gonna go into our actual impressions and details soon, but I just wanted to open things with I am in love with this game.
Oh yeah.
It's been fun.
I had a slow day and I'm sitting at over 30 hours.
Wow. Oh,
Wow.
I'm at like 5, 7. Like I was gonna play a lot today, but then I was like had stuff to do. So
I don't know. I could tell you my hours, but I don't know if it's fair because I fall asleep.
Oh, true.
Yeah. But I'm in the 3. I started the 3-star ranks just before I started preparing the podcast. Got back home from work. I was like, I'm gonna go and kill the bear off. So I just killed the bear off a lot faster than I thought I would. So there's that, and then we did some of the hub missions as well. But we'll get to that in a bit. Let me check in with the chat here, and then we'll sort of move forward with this discussion. Ultimate Break, hello there, Thomas Harden. Is this a Zelda Direct? No, it is not a Zelda Direct. I am sorry if I led you to believe that. I'm
not sure how.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that, like, it's kind of hard to think about how to title the podcast sometimes, because I want people to know I want the title to tell people what it is, right? Because I'm basically dividing into 3 different topics: Zelda anniversary news speculation, Monster Hunter Rise thoughts, and this whole Switch Pro article about it being $350. There's not enough space to just straight up say that and also say, hey, this is a podcast, this is a number. So I have to kind of be careful about the wording there, but at the same time, I don't want to mislead people. So, if you see a question mark in anything, that's definitely not a direct. That is questioning what it may be. So I rely on the question marks a lot for that reason. But no, not a Zelda Direct, a podcast that will include Zelda speculation that could perhaps give us some insight into a Zelda Direct, maybe. But yeah. Hello there, Ridiculous Richie. I am doing well, thank you for asking. Paul Dune, time for my Sunday tradition of watching the podcast and doing homework. Good, I hope we will help you get through that homework, buddy. Solo, hello.
Let me help you there, Joshua. 2 plus 2, that's gonna be 4, my friend. Little hint, little free one from me.
Wow.
Help you with your homework there, friend.
That's deep.
Yeah. I wouldn't have never thought such a thing. 8 times 6 is 48. Just keep that in mind.
Damn.
Going big here.
Josh Coleman. Okay, well, in the Zora's Domain early design art, it shows Zora Domain underground. Ooh, I gotta take a look at that. That'd be interesting. Underground Zora's Domain. Hello there, Ronnie Fazio. Hello there, Super Chris. Hello there, Birdman. Yeah, but I do have Creating a Champion. I actually use a couple pieces of imagery in this for the video I made that came out yesterday. This book is awesome. Like, it's just story time. Like, there's just the art in this book is just beautiful. And some of the stuff you can't just find online. Like, a lot of it, yes, but not all of it. But yeah, there's just some beautiful stuff in here. It's a great book. But yeah, actually, I finally put out the video yesterday for my theory about Loftwings getting into Breath of the Wild 2, like why I think there's a good chance that'll happen. Basically, for those who haven't heard my speculation on it, the basic thinking behind it is that they're going to be expanding upon how we explore in Breath of the Wild 2. We see that the castle's rising up into, we're going to presume, at least the sky to some extent at the end of the sequel trailer. So, you know, there's going to be at least some exploration, at least with the castle, but maybe there'll be more than that. Maybe they'll bring in other parts from different Zelda games that were in the sky, like the Sky City in Twilight Princess and Skyloft in Skyward Sword. It's kind of interesting because we're getting Skyward Sword HD this year. Oftentimes when we get HD remasters, there's some sort of link between that HD remaster and the next big Zelda game. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, those games make nods for Breath of the Wild, and you know, maybe there's something for Breath of the Wild 2 in there. Maybe there'll be Loftwings. It would be like the ideal kind of solution for sky exploration, if that's one of the ways they want to sort of expand the open air concept. So, you know, check out the video if you want more details on that, but that's kind of like the basic concept there, which is why I was using some of the art designs from Creating a Champion, sort of looking at different creatures that we've seen throughout the Zelda series that we could maybe see in the sequel. Moving on with the chat here, though. Hello there, Ice Sonic. Rescue Squad. Christopher Mendez. Andres, has there been any actual news of potential Zelda anniversary celebration, or has it all been speculation, even from leakers? So, yeah, I mean, basically, there hasn't been any, like, actual official news. No, there has not been. But the basic thinking has been that once the Mario anniversary period ends, once Mario dies on March 31st, that Nintendo may start to transition to Zelda anniversary discussions. I feel like Nintendo has already sort of started with what they did during the February Direct, but there hasn't been any official news yet. But we're gonna jump into that topic really soon. Birdman, just 3 more days until Mario's execution. I can't wait till Zelda 35th. It's coming. Yeah. But I mean, I feel like we're pretty much ready to jump into things, right? You guys good to go? Okay. So let's just, since we're already talking a little bit about Zelda, let's just jump into the Zelda stuff. So as I already said, Mario is dying on March 31st. Which
Nintendo's live streaming the execution. It's gonna be brutal.
It's gonna be brutal. And with that, you know, comes the end of 3D All-Stars being available for purchase on the eShop, among a few other things, like I think also Mario 35. So if you haven't picked them up yet, if you haven't tried them out yet, you have just a couple more days. So I would definitely check on that. But anyway, people are starting to think that once that happens, we are going to enter a window into where Nintendo can start talking about Zelda's anniversary. Now, I have sort of had some pushback on this because I've always felt like they could talk about more than one anniversary at once. And I even feel like they already sort of started talking about Zelda's anniversary with the February Nintendo Direct, because it came out just a couple days before the official anniversary for Zelda. And in that presentation, I like saying that there were 4 Zelda announcements. Just bear with me here. So one of them was the announcement of Age of Calamity DLC. And then after that, they announced Skyward Sword HD, but they also confirmed new special Skyward Sword anniversary Joy-Cons as well. So I'm considering that as a 3rd announcement. Maybe you could consider that a cheat, but those are some really nice Joy-Cons. But then they also confirmed that we're going to get details on Breath of the Wild 2 later this year. That's confirmation that there will be some sort of event detailing Breath of the Wild 2. I feel like that's a big deal. I feel like that's implying an actual blowout similar to how we got the Breath of the Wild 1 blowout back at E3 2016. So with that, I felt like they're already saying a lot about Zelda more so than they were for other franchises. So I already feel like they've sort of started the Zelda anniversary discussion to some extent, but obviously not in a very official way where they're saying Zelda Anniversary Direct. But I still feel like they're getting things started.
The anniversary by name.
No.
Yet.
No.
Which is interesting. That's the one thing, because people have been speculating for a while that maybe once Mario's 35th anniversary is over, that's when they'll start talking about Zelda. But I always thought they would talk about it at least a little bit beforehand, and like you said, they kind of did with Skyward Sword, but not really. Like, they still haven't name dropped the 35th anniversary, which is the thing for me where I'm like, oh, maybe they will do something else. Well, I don't know if it'll be a whole direct or what it will be, but it does seem like they'll do something else, because they haven't even, even on the day of the anniversary, they didn't even say anything on Twitter, nothing. Like, they didn't mention it at all.
But they made mention for Mario, they made mention for Fire Emblem, they make mention for a lot of other franchises, even smaller than those, on their social media, but they did not mention Zelda, which has always been big, but has become even larger with Breath of the Wild. It's like one of Nintendo's top franchises, not just in terms of hype and marketing, but actual sales. So it's peculiar.
They really like to push Zelda, so I'm a little surprised they didn't say anything, and that to me, I'd be surprised if they have nothing for the 35th for Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's more coming this year. If anything, I'd say probably that E3 time slot, that June Direct.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing with it, wherever they're putting it or showcasing it or however they're going to present it, I would imagine that's probably going to be pretty Zelda focused.
Yeah, I agree.
They've really enjoyed bringing Zelda to E3 in the past, just like doing some big, huge, crazy blowout on the show floor. So I'd be really surprised if they do nothing this year.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm gonna say right now, I don't think there's gonna be a Zelda Direct, and here's why. If you have a Zelda Direct before and then assuming they have an E3 Direct, which they most likely will, or some sort of event around that time, you just gave away your biggest announcement, which is Breath of the Wild 2. You either don't talk about it in the Zelda Direct, which just pisses everybody off. So, like, why even have the Zelda Direct for just, like, other stuff and not and be like, once again, for the third time, we are not going to talk about Breath of the Wild. Like, no, why would they do that? And then if you do talk about Breath of the Wild, unless it's just like a little hint, a little tease, a big thing I think during E3 is going to be that reveal when we finally see more Breath of the Wild. And I feel like it takes it away if like a month beforehand you show off this big trailer. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
That's just my thinking, though. And it's not foolproof, like...
I kind of agree with you, though. Like, I think you want to kind of keep the big announcements for that big presentation. So... I mean, they don't have to do that, right? Like, if Nintendo wants to go and take more of an untraditional route again, like they did in 2020, then maybe I could see that happening, where they have a Zelda Direct and then later on they have another presentation with all the other stuff. Because that's basically how they sort of handled things in 2020. They gave us that Mario Anniversary Direct. Then I think a few weeks later, we got like several back-to-back announcements like Age of Calamity and Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So... conceivably they could do something like that again, but I do not think that's happening because I already feel like Nintendo has returned to more of a norm. I feel like looking at 2020 as a sort of like map for how Nintendo's going to handle things in 2021 is not maybe the best idea, because that's a strange year. 2020 is a very strange year. I think 2019, 2018 are probably better indicators for how Nintendo will handle their announcements throughout the year, which to me just suggests another big direct around early summer, around June time, which, as I've said repeatedly for the last few months, that's what sort of makes sense, because once we get to early June, which is E3 time, at that point we will not know much more about what's coming in the next couple months. We know about Mario Tennis in June and then Skyward Sword in July. We don't know about any official published Nintendo titles coming out from August and beyond besides Pokemon, and even that doesn't have a hard date yet. So that's about the time where Nintendo needs to start making more announcements. Notice how we got a Direct in February, and all we knew about was Monster Hunter Rise, which isn't even a Nintendo published title, but also Pokemon Snap in April, and then after that, we didn't know anything else. So I feel like by that time, that's when Nintendo's going to start pushing things. So when you consider that and what you said, Brandon, I feel like it is kind of strange to maybe hope for like a Zelda Anniversary Direct before that period. But who's to say they have to do it in June? Because E3 is kind of like not quite... We're not entirely sure how E3 is going to be handled. We're not entirely sure if there's going to be a huge digital event. We know there's not going to be a physical event. So there can't even be like, you know, an on-stage demonstration or like hands-on demos for journalists to play like we had for the last few years, right? So they can't do exactly what they did for Breath of the Wild 1, for example.
I could see, you know, around that E3 time, we would expect all the big three companies to be showing something, and I feel like Nintendo would want something to show there. And generally, they like to, you know, leave their E3s with a little mic drop, and they already blew one they could have used this year, which was Splatoon 3.
Yeah.
And if they're going to drop Splatoon 3 that early and that far away, they could have shown Splatoon 3 several months further down the road looking just that much better. And it would have had the same crazy effect because no one would have seen it coming. And they didn't. They've already expended that one early in the year. So I feel like there's, if not Breath of the Wild, there's got to be something else big coming this holiday, or else they would have used the Splatoon news. Like say they had nothing for holiday for whatever reason. They have nothing for holiday. People would still not be happy, but they would use the Splatoon 3 to sort of push a little bit of hype through the holiday, just, you know, to keep people involved and invested in the platform. And it makes investors happy. So if they're going to use that early in the year, that to me, I feel like something else is coming. They have something to talk about, something big to say.
Yeah. For sure. I like your point that they revealed Splatoon 3 so early. Like, why would they use that? There surely should be other things that would be coming in the second half of 2021 that they could have used instead, but they didn't, which is peculiar. But perhaps a lot of that is tied to Zelda. Perhaps they're saving that for an E3 style presentation around that time. Now, I'll concede that I can maybe see something happening late May instead. Maybe they push up their Direct a little bit, because they don't have to do it like specifically during the actual E3 time. But on that note, they could also wait a few more weeks as well. So like, you know, there's a bit of a window there. Like they could do late May, they could do mid-June or late June. Like there's like a month window where they can maybe have this presentation that I also agree won't be just Zelda. But I do think it'll be like, it'll have like a big Zelda focus. Kind of like in 2018, how they had an E3 Direct. They made a lot of announcements during that time. The first half was everything but Smash Brothers, and the second half was all Smash Brothers. So I'm thinking this year we'll probably have something similar. First half will be other game announcements for Nintendo, and then the second half will be devoted entirely to Zelda. That makes sense to me. I would love to get Zelda news sooner, but I mean, we have Monster Hunter Rise right now. That's a big focus for the marketing that they're going to be pushing for at least a couple weeks. And then we're going to transition to new Pokemon Snap in April. And then there's Miitopia in May. Now, Miitopia you may consider to be a little bit smaller scale compared to Snap or Monster Hunter, but there's going to be some marketing for that as well. So, not saying they can't fit a Direct into the same month as a game release. They surely can. I mean, February had Bravely Default 2, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and a February Direct, and a Pokemon Presents. So they can fit more things within a month, but this is also going to be a bigger presentation. So, you know, just in terms of like marketing and pushing and announcements, like, I could see, I just don't expect to see it in April. Like, we're really not even that far away at this point. We're talking about like 10 weeks at most, 2.5 months at most. Like, we're really not that far away from this supposed E3 Zelda Direct we can maybe see. So I don't think we're that far off. I'm not expecting like an announcement like this week or next week for Zelda. like early April. It's like, oh, now that we're done with Mario, here's
Yeah.
Zelda immediately. Like that would be, I mean, I'll take it, right? Like that's fine, I'll take it, but I just don't expect that.
At
No,
most,
I
I would
don't think-
expect their. Oh, go ahead.
I just don't think Nintendo's like holding their breath ready for the Mario 35th anniversary to be over so they can finally talk about Zelda the next day or something, you know?
At most, I feel like if they are going to start pushing Zelda after the 35th is done for Mario, what they're going to be doing is as soon as the 35th is done, a couple days later, their social media is going to start ramping up on Zelda posts, and it's not going to announce anything. It's just basically going to whip people up into a frenzy.
We'll
And
see the Link
just get them
watermelon
exciting.
picture.
Yeah, hey, there you go.
Yeah, that'd be neat if they
Maybe-
just start releasing
maybe a
like
candy
some.
apple.
Ooh, a candy apple.
He's sitting by the fire with his candy apple.
I feel like I've seen that before. There's probably like some like fan art or something, but
I don't know.
Wow.
yeah,
Just thought you throw an apple on the fire in the game, candy apple, it works.
yeah, no, it does kind of work. Yeah, I mean, I can see that, and I just personally feel like Nintendo doesn't have to like wait for Mario stuff to end to talk about Zelda. Like they don't have to do that. We're already getting Pokemon anniversary stuff now, so they clearly are able to have multiple things. Now you could argue, well, that's what some Pokemon company handles. Yeah, but that's also partially Nintendo. So I think it's more of a they're just waiting for Zelda to happen a little bit later. Like I'm not thinking like it's gonna happen in April, as much as I would want it to. I'll say that we have in the past gotten like a direct and maybe like a direct mini before we get like the summer E3 presentation. So conceivably we could maybe get like a direct mini between now and June. I'm not sure we need it though. Like maybe a partner showcase or something, but I honestly feel like we have pretty much enough until we get to June.
It depends on this rumored Switch Pro, Switch Plus, whatever
Yeah,
we want to call it.
yeah.
Because if it's going to be coming sooner, they have to have some sort of announcement for it, and I would imagine some sort of direct, especially if it's getting some sort of exclusive game, and if it's coming at launch. I feel like that would be they'd probably do more than just a commercial for it. At the same time, they showed off the Switch in a commercial.
Yeah.
So who knows? But
that's
I could see it, just some sort of a direct, just if they're doing an enhanced Switch, a direct to push the enhanced Switch, get it out, go from there. But
maybe it happen. Maybe it happens in late May then, right? Like maybe they do do everything a few weeks sooner for that reason.
Or at the same time, maybe they're bringing hardware to whatever their E3 time slot is, and they're going to do it all at once, and it's going to be this crazy thing, and our minds are going to be blown, and we're not going to know how to handle this. Internet's going to
Perhaps.
burn down from excitement. And
they did
I
reveal a
think-
new 3DS in a direct that Brandon made that point a few weeks ago. So
Yeah.
if we're considering the Switch Pro to be basically like a new 3DS equivalent for the Switch, there's some precedent there.
I think it will have its own separate thing. I think there's gonna be more to talk about. I don't think they'll want to fit it in with E3 because I think they'll have a lot on their hands already. Because they're gonna have a lot to talk about with Breath of the Wild. They'll have a lot to talk about with all their other game announcements, which is like the other half. It's like Breath of the Wild's one half, literally everything else the other half. So I don't know if they have time to show off a machine and really push it and make it. But I kind of see it happening beforehand, maybe in May, before they show off
You
everything
think the
else,
Switch
just
Pro-
so they can
Okay.
maybe just so that they can show everything off with the Switch Pro version in the future. Just be like, if we show off beforehand, we never have to show base Switch stuff again.
they could. That actually
yeah.
does have some merit. They could show like an enhanced Switch before their E3 presentation, then everything they're showing is in 4K.
That'd be
Yeah.
pretty
Like-
cool, actually. I'll kind of give you guys some pushback though, because from what we've heard from the Bloomberg reports, they're not going to start manufacturing these OLED screens that are going to be in the Switch revision until like June or July. So
Yeah,
if
but
they
you
haven't-
don't need that to show it off.
I
You
guess
don't need to
Yeah.
start production.
well, what if there's an issue with production and then what if they announce like a release date for this system in May, and they're not actually ready for when they release the system?
It would be really difficult to have a manufacturing issue at this stage in time for something like that. We're talking old technology. Old technology is cheap because you have. It's not cheap because it's old now. It's cheap because your manufacturing process has less losses. So since you're having less losses, it basically the only thing that could happen is say, massive COVID outbreak at the plant and it has to shut down.
Okay.
And again, that's like you're looking 2 weeks.
So you guys think that they could announce this Switch revision as early as this May? But that would mean
they want to.
Yeah, I guess I like the idea because you can start showing games in 4K in like a June Direct
that's
or something.
That's literally the only reason.
But the thing is, like, now, by the way, I don't see the system coming out until like October, like September at the earliest.
Yeah.
So I guess my thing is like I'm even maybe expecting November. Like maybe like they launch it with Breath of the Wild too. Like that's the launch title for the Switch revision. And it comes out in November, and they push the Zelda anniversary. Like, if you think about it, for example, Skyward Sword was used to celebrate the 25th anniversary. That was a big November game. So I kind of see that happening, like a Breath of the Wild 2 to celebrate the anniversary in November. And if that's the case, it would be weird, in my opinion, for them to announce a Switch revision in May for it to just come out in November. Like, that's a huge sort of gap.
Now,
well, if you look at the new 3DS... But not for their older products, and not for any of their upgrades. See, the Switch Lite isn't an upgrade, it's a downgrade, essentially. You don't need marketing and hype for a cheaper product. You just say, we have a cheap product, and everyone goes, holy shit, let me buy that.
Sure.
Bigger products, more expensive, you need more marketing. The new 3DS, I believe it was like over half a year in between when it was first showed and when it released. It was a pretty big gap. It was a long time.
Well,
just to
the Switch Lite.
To also throw a little bit of an argument in there, I don't think this enhanced Switch should be launched with any hardware. Or sorry, with any software. I don't think there should be a game that comes with it. I think they should just launch it. Of course, you're gonna have like slightly lower, like the thing's gonna sell out day one. Obviously, they can. With everything going on over the last year plus, like. It doesn't make sense that it doesn't sell out and get scalped and all these other things. But what it does is it allows them to put it out there. Even if scalpers buy it, Nintendo gets the money. They can then refocus the money back in, refunnel it back into building more of these, and then have like another wave. And then by the time you hit holiday, you'll actually have them in stock and people can actually purchase them. So, right. And then that's when your big game, like then it's like, and then our big push for our big wave afterwards of just dumping a ton of consoles that we've stockpiled just so happens to coincide with maybe a Breath of the Wild 2. But the system's already been launched. So everyone that wanted one day one and fought for pre-orders and then fought against scalpers and all these other things, they would have it already. So you'd have like a big portion of them out there in the world and then hopefully get through the big mess of everything that's going on online right now with shopping. And then you would actually have something to sell actual people that are going to purchase your games. Because as much as we want to say, okay, well, Nintendo gets the money from the sale, they're happy. I don't think they care so much about how much the Switch itself is making them when it's the platform and the people buying the games that makes them more money.
Yeah. And there's kind of a sort of a correlation, I guess. Like, when the Switch Lite came out, there were games that came out alongside it, tons. But, like, the bigger game for that, like, Pokemon, it had its own special edition, Switch Lite. That didn't come out till months later. Like, there was this whole edition that was announced when the console was announced, and it didn't even come out for months afterwards. So they kind of did that. Like, they had a launch. There were games, but arguably one of the bigger portable gaming series, was coming out a few months later. Not on launch day.
So, I think you guys raised some interesting points. Because, the biggest game with the biggest release of the year was not what they used to push the Switch Lite. They did, but, not like when the Switch Lite came out. It was Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening and Dragon Quest XI's. Like, they had those games come out. I think Link's Awakening literally came out the exact same day as the Switch Lite. I could double check that. actually.
It was like very close.
It was pretty
Either
close.
way.
It was also really close to the time of the new Switch, like the one with the new chip in it.
Yeah, the better battery.
Yeah.
version.
I don't even know what we're calling that now.
The battery revision is typically what I refer to it as.
Mine has a label on it that says Monster Hunter on the back,
Mhm.
just so I know which one is the newer one.
Technically,
Switch
I
Lite came
think
out September 20, 2019, and then Link's Awakening
it's supposed to be referred to as like the -1 model because that's
September
literally the
2019.
only thing they added to the end of like.
I just
The-
double
Oh,
checked. They came out the
I
same.
think people are
exact
calling it
week.
like Marico. Like
That's true.
Marico.
The Miracle model that works.
Anyway, the point I wanted to get at though is that we've seen Nintendo have this history. It's a pattern at this point of releasing hardware with Zelda. Like they've continually done that. So that's why I still feel strongly about Breath of the Wild 2. But at the same time, like I kind of agree with what you guys are saying as well. Like it does kind of make sense for this revision to come out, say September, or maybe even as early as July, if that's even possible. And you release something, other games that come out around that time, and then when you're ready for a second wave, when it's more readily available, you bring out the big Zelda game. It's super hype, and maybe they can even have like a special Zelda version of that. Like that'd be pretty darn cool. Like that would be awesome. I'd be very excited for a special Zelda edition. I'd also be very upset though, because if let's say we get a Switch Pro like in September and it comes out with like say like a Metroid game or something, and even though like let's say we get Prime Trilogy, you can play it in 4K, right? Like that'd be nice. It wouldn't be a big deal, but it'd be nice. And then I buy this, and then a month and a half later, Nintendo's like, oh well, here's the Zelda plans. We got a special Zelda version of Switch Pro. I'm like, oh crap.
Did it with the light. They do
Yeah.
that though, because it's going like the initial launch is going to sell anyways. They're going to sell out. They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And then after that, they can start doing other things. Like that's like I'm kind of in a great position now because at this point in time, I have zero reason to get it.
Mhm.
Unless they show something better than 4K. I don't have a 4K screen. I'm
But you have
not
a
buying
1080p monitor, so at
Yeah.
least get the benefits up to 1080p. A lot of games don't even hit.
But
Even
everything's
900
running
on Switch.
well right now, so I'm not too worried. Like
Yeah, fair.
like my eyes aren't amazing.
But what if Monster
I'm
Hunter
not.
60 FPS? Oh,
I
all of
can
a
play
sudden
it.
things
I
might
can play it at
change.
30. I don't need to spend.
I mean,
you know,
well, Doom is presenting a
400
great argument for most Switch players. This is not saying it's going to be for everyone, right? It's going to be for a
Yeah.
relatively small part
Yeah.
of the market. Like, obviously, there's going to be a few million people like getting this, but it's not going to be the 80 plus that we have right now for current Switch owners. So it's going to be a little different.
It's another way for Nintendo to refresh things, get more excitement, stay in the news, stay relevant. Again, like these systems come out, and it's not like the previous lesser systems stop selling. What actually tends to happen is they go on sale and they sell like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
I wouldn't like again. I don't have to get it in order for this to be successful. It's going to be successful anyways. So just to me, my big thing right now, the one thing I do want is for Splatoon. I've said it multiple times. There is a latency in the motion controls with the gyro when like just between the Switch and the controller. That doesn't happen on the PC. There is no like that delay still isn't there. If they fix that, then yeah, I'm gonna want one. Other than that, 60 FPS Monster Hunter, yeah, I would love that.
That'd be pretty
But is
sick.
it worth the money? I don't know. Maybe I
We'll
can
see.
sell my
I'll tell you that
my launch Switch or
when
something
we
for it.
heard all the
Yeah.
rumors for the initial Nintendo Switch, like we were hearing, oh, Nintendo's gonna have a dockable portable system that you could play your games on the TV, but it's a portable system. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound pretty great. Like, you look at what the 3DS was, right? You look at what the Wii U was, like, it was hard to envision Nintendo making a competent system from a horsepower perspective that would still have good battery and just be cool. Like, they would be able to, like, satisfy both sides. And then, so I had a hard time believing the rumor at the time. But then when they finally showed it off, I was like, oh, this is the best thing ever. All right, they did it. This is what they have to do. They partnered with NVIDIA, and it works. Awesome. So I guess my point is that we can have an idea of what they're maybe doing now based off Bloomberg and analyzing what the little details we know about different reports and rumors and things of that nature. But until Nintendo actually announces it, we won't actually know how much we want it. You know what I mean? Like, when they present it to us, when they advertise it and market it and paint it in a way that is more tantalizing, and perhaps there are certain details we don't know about yet, then that may change, you know? I mean, what if it does come with, you know, like better Bluetooth in there, so there's less latency, for example? What if it does come with Joy-Cons that have an audio jack, or a Pro Controller with an audio jack? What if...
Or just aren't broken.
Maybe. What if it has 10-hour battery life or something, you know? Like, there's a number of things that they could do that we wouldn't know about yet that would probably make it even more inviting. So there's certainly options. Now, I know we've been kind of like talking about Zelda but Pro as well. Like, these topics are definitely blending together here. We haven't really gone to the report yet, but I want to just kind of stop in with it into the chat real quick and address a few points or questions. So Birdman added me. I think Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl will release in October just like X and Y. So then another big Nintendo game releases in November. I'm of a similar frame of mind, actually. Like, I've been thinking that they would actually position Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl in October, because we already know that Pokemon Legends Arceus, the actual main focus of Game Freak right now, is coming out early 2022. To me, that suggests March 2022 to close out the fiscal year. They're going to have a big open world Pokemon game to close out the fiscal year. That'll be a great end. But with that in mind, that sort of positions Zelda in a different place, right? Like, maybe Zelda can't make it out for the holiday, maybe, but I feel like them saying this game comes out early 2022 suggests that they do have a big game positioned for the holiday. And going back to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, if you're going to have a big new Pokemon game coming out, say March 2022, how close do you really want this other Pokemon remake to be? Maybe pushing it away that additional month makes a little bit more sense, so it's more of a 6-month window, half a year. October, like you said, to your point, X and Y came out in October. Maybe it's time that, you know, Pokemon games stop coming out in November and then Nintendo starts saving even bigger or more hype releases for that time. A Breath of the Wild 2, maybe that could be the game that would satisfy that big November release. Maybe. But moving on here, we got a super chat from DOS. Thank you very much for the super chat, Dio. Dio said, or asked, seeing as there's a chip shortage, do you think there's going to be problems trying to push out this new hardware? Should Nintendo release it in 2022? So, you know, I'm not going to pretend like I understand every single facet of the chip shortage issue that's going on. I know that we have an issue with semiconductor chips. Dumo, you and I were talking about it a few days ago. You showed me a video that was quite enlightening. I still don't understand all the details here, but basically, from what I vaguely understand, because of the pandemic and a lot more people buying technology, there was a certain amount of supply and there was a greater amount of demand, which put a whole bunch of things into funk, and now there's a great deal of demand and not a lot of supply. So there's a lot of efforts right now to build up more manufacturers of these semiconductor chips, which are used for like everything. Computers, laptops, cars, other technological things, including video game systems. Cell phones, which are huge.
TVs.
Yeah. Like, the iPhone 12 release probably put a big stress on that as well. So because of that, it is probably going to be challenging to get out hardware. But hardware is still selling. It is something that I feel like should be noted here. It's not like there isn't things coming out. You can still buy technology now. But yes, for sure, there are challenges. So it's hard to say if for sure we'll see a Switch revision this year. But I feel like Nintendo's probably had this plan for a while. I think it's possible that they already had maybe some semiconductors put to the side for that, you know? Or at least they had put in orders in ahead of time. If that's the case, then this supply issue may not be too much of an issue to get Switch revision out by the holidays. I don't know that. It's hard to say. But assuming Bloomberg is telling us the entire truth here, there's already a plan to start manufacturing screens for the system this summer. and you're going to try to get out 1 million per every month at least. So, you know, Bloomberg's saying one thing, people are assuming other things because of this semiconductor sort of shortage. I don't know. Obviously, something maybe has to give, but I am of the frame of mind that it is still coming out this year, especially because what I explained earlier in terms of the whole Pokemon situation. I feel like the Pokemon situation implies that Nintendo has something else bigger that's coming out for this holiday. I think it's Breath of the Wild too. So, historically speaking, you have a big Zelda game to push hardware. Even if it doesn't come out the same day, to your point, Dumo, you still agree that it would make sense to have that out for the holiday to push more hardware. So,
I don't see why, if it's possible, I don't see why it wouldn't make sense.
Right, if it's possible, which is, I guess, the point of contention here, because of the pandemic, because of the semiconductor shortage.
Also, on top of that, you have to remember the semiconductors. They're basically when you're putting in orders for chips. How it was explained, anyways, is that companies have to order these a year in advance, so they have to select their forecast, and then they have to book time with the companies making these in order to have the line be theirs. So that's what's getting pushed out. So what happened when you're looking at things like graphics cards? There was an absurd amount of demand, but not the demand that would be normal. So it was like a crazy amount of demand for the absolute top end. So like your 3090s, 3080s, 3070s, those things sold like crazy this year. And that was something they never could have seen coming. And now we're into a point where it's like, okay, well, 3070s are selling really well. The 3060 Ti is a cut down 3070, but the manufacturing process has gotten better, so they're getting less losses to make the 3060 Ti, so it's becoming a 3070. All this to say, if Nintendo believed in this enhanced version, and they believed that they could do 5 million in sales of it this year, they could have booked 5 million, and we could have a big push. It depends on what they booked, but it's not like they're not going to get the time for it. The shortage has been known for a while. We knew it was coming before the year started. So this whole thing, they knew what was available, what was going to be available. So it's whether or not they managed to book enough. And it's completely possible that they did, completely possible that they didn't. We don't actually know, only they know right now.
Something I've been curious about is, obviously they have these lines and they have these semiconductors that they will use for the Switch they're already making. Would it be possible to say, oh, we're making 20 million Switches, let's just say, I'm just pulling a number, 20 million Switches a year. If we take 5 million and make Switch Pros instead, can we use those lines and those semiconductors for that? I don't know how that works, but
I would imagine stronger chip, more semiconductors would be my guess, which means that if they don't have it allotted already, then they're not getting it. Also, when you start doing stuff like that, as far as manufacturing goes, I don't know. You're basically looking at shutting down a line, switching it over to something else. So the amount that you thought so say you're like, oh, well, we're going to make 5 million Switches in this period of time. Well, let's cut that down and make 3 million Switches and 2 million Switch Pros. Well, you're not going to get that because you're going to lose time in the manufacturing changeover. And I have absolutely no idea in a manufacturing process like that how long that changeover actually takes. But you're going to get losses. It's not going to be the same.
Right, it might be inefficient, but if they have to do it, I assume that they could do that as well. And it wouldn't, I'm not even saying that would be 100% of the lines, right? Assume that they ordered a lot of lines, maybe they want, maybe they could only order 3 or 4 million worth, and they want an extra 1 or 2 million. They don't really need a whole bunch more just to help out.
The only thing with that is that if you can't buy an enhanced Switch, a lot of people are just going to buy another Switch. So they'll buy a lesser Switch, and you'll get that commonly. Again, you won't get people double dipping and buying an enhanced one to replace their Switch Lite or whatever. But the people that are buying new are just if it's for Christmas, it's like, oh, I can't get a Switch Pro, I'll just get a regular Switch. And so it comes down to it: does it make sense financially for Nintendo to lose out on those Switch sales from the loss from the changeover and the time to try to get out a few more Switch Pros? And I don't know. I don't know numbers. I don't know time loss.
So we can guess. We can try to make our best educated guess.
I'll tell you this. So I guess the consensus we have right now is that if Nintendo had the foresight to put in the orders for the semiconductors, then they're fine. That's what seems to be the impression, right? I don't understand the full details of everything, but that's what we're sort of thinking right now, correct? If
More or less, yes.
If they had the foresight for that. Okay, so I'll tell you this. And I feel like Nintendo's had in mind this Switch revision for a long while already. I feel like the rumors and reports, a lot of that was because this has been in the works for quite some time. If you go back to the beginning of 2020, January 2020, Shuntaro Furukawa, the president of Nintendo, literally said, do not expect any Switch revisions this year. I feel like him even saying that is suggesting that there is a plan for what they're going to be doing for hardware in the future. So the point I'm simply making here is that I feel like Nintendo probably has been relatively forward thinking, and there's a decent chance that they might have, gone this ahead of time, knowing all of this. Like, obviously they couldn't have predicted the pandemic exactly, right? But I don't know. I feel like there's a good chance that they've been very forward thinking on this, and at least based off the Bloomberg reports, that has been. They're pumping them out. Like, they keep coming. Like, they're not bending. They're still saying holiday. So maybe they were prepared for this and they are ready for the holiday.
Again, you have to put these orders in so far in advance that if they intended to launch this year, it's going to launch this year. Like, everyone who put in orders has them. The problem with things like your graphics cards and stuff like that is that they put in orders. They actually ordered more graphics cards this year because they knew there was going to be a greater demand. They put in more orders for them. It's just the demand was too much. Now the lines are full and you can't do anything. Like, there's nowhere to buy time. Like, and it's not even so much, like, oh, well, Apple could buy more time if they wanted. No, they can't. There is no time. And it's not like, oh, well, they can just give them more money and then just take over the line. It's like, no, there's contracts involved. So if Nintendo planned to launch this year, they've already got orders in. It's going to be fulfilled. I would have no concerns with that. The big question is, how much did they order? And then you even have to ask, did they order anything? Is this even a thing? Is this still something they're looking into? Because we've been getting rumors like this since before the system launched in 2017. And then when it wasn't an X2 in the system, they're like, oh, well, there's a Switch Pro coming. The X2 is a Switch Pro, and it's going to have 8 gig of RAM and all this stuff. And then from there, it's like, I don't know. To me, a lot of this feels more like someone thought they were right and weren't, and now they're just beating that dead horse and hoping something comes of it. And I feel like it's going to happen, but a lot of this stuff seems really forced to me right now, and I believe it's going to happen, but I'll believe it is happening when Nintendo officially announces it. And before then, I don't care. And it's just like, okay, you've been calling this for 3 years. I still don't give you credit because I can call the PS6 right now and just keep telling you every year it's coming this year. And eventually I'm going to be right. It didn't mean I knew anything.
Someday. Yo, Wii HD.
True. Though I will say the rumors previously weren't really ever from reliable sources. It was just kind of more speculation that people some reason took as rumors. Like, they weren't even really rumors. They were just things that people said, like, oh, that could happen, and people were like, this is definitely happening. Like,
a lot of
this is an actual, supposed leaks. Like, there was no actual information before.
A lot of the mental leaks. Yeah, if I remember the Wall Street Journal before the Switch Lite came out and the battery revision, they said there was going to be 2 different revisions. And people were like, oh, no. And the thing is, with those 2 revisions, people were thinking, oh, there's better hardware in here. One of these is a Switch Pro. Like, they made that mental jump. It was better hardware, but it was not a Switch Pro. Like, they went for better battery instead of better horsepower.
Yeah.
So, but that was where that came from. They made the assumption it was a Switch Pro because it had better internals. But it still happened, though. The reports from Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal, they were entirely legitimate. There were revisions coming. Were there some interpretations based off the actual information that perhaps led some people astray? Sure. Which is why you gotta be really careful about rumors, even if they're coming from a reliable source, because until it's actually presented by the company in question, Nintendo, you don't entirely understand their vision here. You don't entirely understand what they're doing. But with what Bloomberg's doing right now, I feel like it's pretty clear that, assuming you trust Bloomberg, and I do, something is coming. Is it going to be exactly what we expect? I don't know. It's worth noting that a lot of their reports have speculation mixed in there. They have their analysts put their own thoughts into there, and people can take those details and perhaps miss them because of poor reading comprehension or just inappropriately placed context. Like, things can be, it's a rumor, right? Like, growing up when you were in school, did they ever do the exercise where you have people in a line? One person tells one person one thing, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, what was said in the beginning is entirely different from what it is at the end. Right, exactly. So, definitely take it with a grain of salt, but I do think there is improved hardware coming. And based off the Bloomberg report, I think it's coming this year. And I think Breath of the Wild 2 could be the game they are positioning to push this hardware. But let's we're going to talk about the pricing a little bit, but I want to just go back to Zelda for a brief moment, because I feel like there's a few other things we didn't cover too much. Sure, we were sort of kind of talking about when we can maybe get the Zelda news, but we were focused mostly on Breath of the Wild 2 stuff. What about the other things? For example, there's Age of Calamity DLC. We know that part of it's coming out in June, the first wave. I feel like we should at least get another trailer update for Skyward Sword HD, one more thing before that game comes out. And then there's been all these trademarks and rumors for other Zelda games like Ocarina of Time, and Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker, and Phantom Hourglass. And then, of course, there's a lot of merchandising planned, supposedly. When do we get all that? I feel like all of that could be... That's my cat making a random noise. Sorry. I feel like all of that could probably come in, a direct that has a Zelda anniversary focus. But I also think that maybe people are perhaps overblowing just how much the Zelda stuff is going to come. Why is Nintendo going to do things exactly the same way they did it with Mario? I think there'll be some similarities, but I'm not necessarily expecting every single Zelda game, or almost every single Zelda game, to be available on the Switch by the end of the year.
No.
I would love if it was available by the end of the lifetime.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Every Zelda in one place.
Oh,
yeah.
Be a dream.
It would
so
be.
good.
It would be really great. That's why Wii U was not bad, because you could play pretty much every Zelda on there, which is pretty special.
Just not the best way to play those versions.
Sure.
Unfortunately,
but they were available.
Kind of bad.
I'll also say that Mario is more, I want to say, digestible than Zelda. You jump into a Zelda game, that's going to take you a lot longer than it does a Mario game. You know what I mean? So the idea of getting almost every single Mario game out in a short span is more feasible than Zelda. Especially because I think there's already a few more Mario games on Switch than there were Zelda games.
Yeah, perhaps. I honestly don't remember.
Again,
think,
it's...
SNES and NES games, obviously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's Nintendo. Are they going to do and again, bring up the point of oh, they're going to do it exactly the same as Mario. It's wait a second. When has Nintendo ever done anything exactly the same? It's oh, this worked out perfectly. It would be perfect if you did this exactly the same. Nintendo's we want to try something new. And then they bomb it.
Or they hit out of the park.
You don't know. It's Nintendo. Anything can happen.
It's gonna be
That's
hard
kind of
for them
the
to screw up
exciting.
Zelda, though. Like they can't
Yeah.
really screw it up. Like however they
Yeah.
choose to present it, we may critique how they present it, but it's still gonna work out for them because of the Zelda. So it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm personally not
Currently-
expecting for us to get a Zelda presentation where they're like, all right, Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD combo pack, Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask combo pack, Oracle of Ages and Seasons combo pack. Like I would love that, and maybe we do get all of that by the end of the Switch's life cycle. They do want to have at least one Zelda game to come out every single year, so they might want to space things out a little bit, you know? Like maybe they have like some sort of Zelda release come out in February, a few months after the release of Breath of the Wild too, you know? That'd be nice. And then maybe there's something else beyond that. So I'm just saying, I'm not expecting everything. Maybe we get more than just Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, but I feel like that's already a decent amount of Zelda.
Yeah. I'm honestly thinking at this point that's like maybe some like small eShop things, but I'm thinking that's mostly what we're gonna be just Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they save Wind Waker and Twilight Princess for like another year.
What? It's just how much Zelda can you play all at once?
Exactly.
Especially if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming, say it's coming this year, and it's another open world game that you're supposed to sink a few hundred hours into. Like,
That would be
how much more Zelda do you need for the year? And then again, they want a Zelda release every year, so it's like, okay, so they're gonna remake the DS games and have to completely change the controls on them and all these other things, and figure out all the little things that they did that were very DS specific. They're gonna have to figure out how to make that work on the Switch. Then they're gonna jam it just someplace randomly. Like they're gonna spread that out.
Here's another point to be made.
As much
though.
as I want them all there, they're going to spread them out because they can't.
Right, exactly. But there's another point to be made, I feel. So, with Mario's 35th anniversary, there weren't any big AAA ambitious new Mario games to come for it. They had to sort of repurpose a lot of old content, and some smaller, newer stuff were thrown in to kind of fill it all out. We're getting Breath of the Wild too. Like, that's huge. It's probably going to be the biggest, longest, most ambitious Zelda game ever. Like, that's what we're getting. Like, that's enough for the anniversary on its own. But we're also getting Skyward Sword. There's already this Age of Calamity DLC. And to the point where we were discussing about how Zelda's not as digestible as Mario, like, they're longer games, you probably need to space that out a little bit more as well. And Nintendo does want to come out with Zelda games every single year, so I'm just saying, I think we all kind of agree, like, it's maybe not the best expectation to think we're going to get all of this Zelda all within a year. It's probably going to be spaced out a little bit more.
I want it. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I've been getting that itch for Twilight Princess. I want to do it. I don't want to go back to my Wii U to play. I kind of want it on my Switch. Yeah. And there are rumors suggesting we'll get it. I'm just not sure we're going to get it like immediately after Skyward Sword, you know? So,
yeah,
we'll think we'll have to wait a little bit for that. I mean, think about this. Skyward Sword, we've been talking about Skyward Sword for years. Like on Switch. Like, when was the actual, like, it's been at least 2 years that we've been sort of talking about Skyward Sword HD being a thing. At least 2, maybe more than that. When was the, because there was
2017, I thought.
Has it really been 4 years?
I think it was
AJ knew a Skyward
No,
Sword.
it was
Switch, right?
2018, wasn't it?
Google knew exactly what I was searching
2018.
for. 2018.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we've been talking about Skyward
That's what
Sword
I was
HD
thinking.
on Switch since 2018. So the point I'm making here is, even though we have rumors and trademarks for other Zelda games, I think they could very well be real, but that doesn't mean they're coming out like when we want them to, you know? So we'll see.
Not only was that was like Skyward Sword HD wasn't a rumor. That was Miyamoto was like, "You guys want Skyward Sword? Yeah."
Yeah.
And then we waited this long for it.
Yeah. So
So
you know,
if that's when they're willing to, basically tease it to us and then wait this long to actually show it to us, who knows what's in the works?
Right.
In fact, who knows what? It might not even be the Zelda team working on it. Like, who knows? Out of all the studios that they have access to that can port something,
Probably wasn't.
like who knows what studio was even working on this.
True, and there's also
Yeah,
a
they
strong
haven't said so
possibility
yet.
this game's been done for a while, and it's just been sitting on a shelf waiting until Nintendo's like, all right, time to drop this. This is when it makes sense.
Who knows?
Yeah, a lot of good possibilities, but we don't know. But anyway, I am hopeful we get Zelda news as soon as possible, but I feel like a good bet is like that late May, early June period, a summer style type of E3 kind of direct or something like that. And then there we'll get some Zelda news, some good Zelda announcements. That's my sort of expectation, and that's really not even that long from now. We're talking about 2.5 months. That's not that bad. So with that in mind, though, let's kind of transition to this Switch revision that potentially could launch with Breath of the Wild. We're not sure. We're getting more information from Bloomberg, as we sort of discussed earlier, but now they're sort of saying that the system could cost as much as $399.99 USD, American dollars. Now, it's important to note that in the actual article, which I got to read earlier, I'm blocked out right now, they like having paid subscriptions on there. $349.99 is what I read, but their analyst thinks Nintendo could push it as far as $400. So
Yeah.
they're not saying it's going to cost $400. Kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, how like there's information we have, and then people sort of see the speculation, and maybe that gets misconstrued as like fact, right? The expected range based off the analysis there from Bloomberg is $350 to $400. My personal thinking is that this Switch revision is going to cost $349.99. That's what I think.
I don't see, I don't see it costing 400. Because then
It's
you're
an
getting
expensive
into
Nintendo
next
system.
you're getting into next gen system prices.
Yeah.
And like real next gen, like obviously like $300 you can get a Series S, but that's not next gen. It's like next gen light.
Yeah.
Well,
Like, you
it's
can get
next
a
gen. It just
PS5.
isn't 4K.
Yeah, you can get a legit full power PS5 for 400.
Yeah. I think
That's a tough
$349.99
sell.
undercuts those systems, so they can kind of do that. I honestly feel like they'd be better off coming out at $300, but you know, do what you can. They can always you can start
Yeah.
high and then price drop later.
I feel like 350 is a smart one. Like
also-
you don't want to get up to PS5 numbers like
No.
price.
But it
You-
also
they,
gives them the opportunity to do price drops as well for the other systems.
they can do price drop even at 350.
Yeah, but like imagine Switch revision comes out $350, base Switch $250. Maybe this is too low, but Switch Lite $150. Like that's a very clean breakdown. Not saying they'll do that, but they could. Switch has been out since 2017, and it's yet to see a price drop.
And when it came out, they were, I can't remember who it was, but it was Nintendo themselves said that the Switch is priced with a price drop in mind. And that was in 2017.
Yeah. No, I remember
So,
when
they
the Switch
can.
first came out, people were like, $300? Are you kidding me? I can buy a PS4 for like $200, $250.
And it's still
So,
selling well.
I think as long as you're not encroaching on next gen prices, you're good. So
I just really like the idea of this $349.99 4K capable Switch. But then for those who don't care for 4K, we're price dropping base Switch to $250. And for those who don't care for TV play at all, we got that Switch Lite at $150. Maybe it's not exactly that, but like an across the board price drop. You know what that's going to do for sales? Like if they're worried about not hitting the mark this year compared to last year, you do that price drop, they're going to do it, right? Especially if you have some compelling software, like they have a new Pokemon game coming up this year, maybe Breath of the Wild 2, a few other things. There's Pokemon Legends Arceus coming out to close the fiscal year. Monster Hunter Rise is definitely, you know, it's turning some heads. People are noticing this game right now, so it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and it's going to get updates all throughout the year. So
That I'm
It's-
really excited about.
again, it's going to stay in the news.
Yeah.
And this is a franchise that sells first-party Nintendo numbers anyways
Mm-hmm.
on Nintendo consoles. So, you know, everyone
You think
complains
Monster
that
Hunter
third
Rise?
parties don't sell.
I'll hold off on the Monster Hunter stuff for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to.
But
hold off for a moment.
so as far as like, I feel like they would want to get like if we're going to talk price drops. It goes back to things that we were looking at in that video with the semiconductors, where they're talking about the economy and how it's yes, the economy's like recovered 90%, but the 90% that recovered is the upper echelon of the market. The lower end, like the people making minimum wage and aren't doing so well, have never recovered. So it's like, if you're going to sell to those people right now, like this might not have been the plan before, but looking at numbers now, it would be really smart to try to get that Switch Lite down to 150. Even if nothing else changed, getting that Switch Lite down to 150 gets people, like, it gets in swinging range for some people, because the economy at the lower end right now is in a really bad state. And if Nintendo wants to sell to those people, they're going to need a price drop.
Think of it like this, okay? So, if my prediction is correct, right? My prediction has been Breath of the Wild 2, Switch revision, holiday. By the holiday. So let's say we get that by the holiday. But also, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. It's still a big new... It's a new remake. It's still going to have some serious selling potential. You have that, and perhaps a Gen 4 remake branded Switch Lite come out, and they price drop it to $149.99. So you have a new Pokemon game, Switch Lite $150. You have a 4K Switch, epic, open, ambitious Breath of the Wild 2. That's also there. You have both those things, and then you also have base Switch at $250 with other big games that are now available, like Monster Hunter Rise, maybe a new Metroid game, maybe a new Fire Emblem game, and that's gonna be like a really... they'll do really. Nintendo will do really well if they do something like that.
At the same time, it depends on what they want. It like
they might
they
not
could
need
price
to do
drop
that
at any point in time. They might not need to. They're selling like crazy. Like, again, the pandemic, everyone's getting like, there's so many issues with the pandemic, and Nintendo's just chugging along with one game release and just cleaning house, like 30 million in under a year for Animal Crossing during a global pandemic. Like, they got lucky with the timing of the perfect game at the perfect time, you know?
Yeah, but
it also came out at the time where people were like, this will blow over. I can use all my spending money. This will be fine.
Yeah.
The timing was very strong for that. But just going back to the topic, though, so you guys are all the frame of mind that the Switch version is more likely going to cost $350, not $400.
Yes, I think $350 is more likely than $300 or $400.
I think it's more likely. I think it, like, from my perspective, it seems to make a lot more sense, but who knows?
Well, here's another idea. What if Nintendo's like, no, we don't need a price drop. Let's launch this thing at $400. People are still going to buy it. Especially though, if they can only come out with like 5 million this year anyway, they probably could sell for like 5 million of it for $400. They'll keep Switch at $300, and they'll keep Switch Lite at $200, and they'll still sell out. They might.
They could launch that thing at $400, have everyone fight for them, and then after the first day and all the sales are bought, be like, you know what? We're gonna relaunch it again in a year at $350 and just completely screw over all the scalpers. It'd be hilarious. Mind you, the actual people that bought it at $400 would be too pleased.
That'd be me.
But
very upset.
You know, ambassador program.
I don't know.
It's an ambassador program.
It's a weird time to launch things right now. Just especially things that aren't going to be launched like with crazy numbers, because you can't launch this at the numbers that iPhone can. Like, scalpers can't do much about an iPhone because there's going to be so many there that they're going to go broke even trying to control the market, and it's still not even going to dent it. Whereas these systems, you know, if you're in a city and you manage to get 20 of these systems in the city and there was only 100 sent to the city, you're kind of in control there.
Yep. That's why you have to pre-order literally right after the announcement, which is what I did with the Switch. I literally went, okay, it's done. I'm walking to GameStop. I put my pre-order in. Okay.
I tried to, and I couldn't because I had to do it online. And then my wife sent me a message afterwards saying that on her break she went and pre-ordered me one. So I was like,
Nice.
Nice. I just got my game
I got lucky there.
digitally. But I feel like we're pretty much ready to sort of transition over to Monster Hunter. But I do want to check in the chat real quick. And guys, if you have more questions, feel free to put them out there. We'll address them throughout the rest of the discussion. I just want to get to a few comments here before we move on to Monster Hunter, though. Shout out to Gamebird Classic. What's up, buddy? Let's see here. All right, so Izzy XD 1019. So the current quarter ends this Thursday. Should we expect a 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda Direct to happen either in late April or early May? Well, I feel like most of our discussion was suggesting otherwise. It just... could they do that? Sure. Could they? I think they could. But it's just one of those things where, like, what are they going to do for E3? Maybe they don't do something at E3. But I feel like they're positioned to have a presentation either, like, late May or early June. I've been thinking early June just because that's how historically it's always been. But also, if we look at Age of Calamity, the first wave of that DLC is supposed to happen in June. So if you're going to have a direct where you focus on Zelda announcements, maybe one of those announcements is an Age of Calamity Wave 1 Shadow Drop. So my thinking is June, early June though. But we'll see. I mean, conceivably they could start talking about Zelda sooner than that.
If we want to start talking quarters, you don't do something at the beginning of a quarter. You always wait till the end because it has more of an impact with your investors. So for this quarter, the big impactful thing was Monster Hunter Rise. It sold a ton of systems. It's doing really well, and a lot of people are incredibly happy with it. Then we're looking near the end of the next quarter is going to be around that E3 time in June. You're going to they expect at least the second half of the quarter in order to get announcements, not in the first. So I would be very surprised if they announce much in April or even May, maybe late May. But if we're going to talk quarters, typically they want to do something to impress investors and sell to investors at the end of the quarter.
You know, actually, Doom, I think that you made a really great point with that. I'm just to kind of corroborate that, I'm looking over at like the Direct Archive. So let me kind of just show you guys. We're going back to the good old Direct Archive because I feel like it is indicative.
A wealth of knowledge.
The Direct Archive tells all. So just look at over the years, right? So let's go to 2017 might be the only exception here where they had an April Nintendo Direct, but I feel like that's fair because they literally came up with the system the month before.
They were doing directs like crazy in 2017.
But let's go to 2018. 2018, you open up with a Direct Mini, then you have a March Nintendo Direct in March. I was gonna say a March Nintendo Direct in March, but that's redundant.
Duh.
Yeah, but then you look what happens. April, nothing. May, nothing. June, E3 Direct. Move on to 2019 here. 2019, they have a February Nintendo Direct, a Pokemon Direct, kind of similar to how we had this year, right? And then in May they had a Mario Maker Direct, so it was a game that we already knew about that was coming around that time, so they detailed it. But beyond that, there was nothing else until a Pokemon Direct, then E3. That was all in June. So basically, between once they got to that first quarter is where we got the information, and then until the end of the second quarter, to your point, Dumo, is when we started getting more information on Nintendo stuff. 2020 is a weird year, but even with 2020, we got news until March, and then we didn't get anything until late summer. So there's a bit of a pattern here. It makes sense. I think it kind of holds up to your point, Dumo, that why would Nintendo reveal something early in the quarter? They'll wait till later. I think that makes a lot of sense. And June is the final month of the quarter.
We've, even on this podcast, you've brought it up several times. Like, well, nothing has happened, and we literally know nothing this year, and the quarter's about to end. What are they going to tell investors? So there's got to be a direct coming in the next couple of weeks.
And then
and
it
then
happens.
a direct comes in the next couple of weeks because they have to tell their investors something. Like you
Right.
can't go and do an investor meeting and then be like, so you don't have any plans for any games? We do. Well, what are they? We can't tell you yet. Okay, well, what games? We can't tell you. When are games coming? We can't tell you. Like you can't go into an investors meeting and tell them nothing. They do not like that.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna go another year where we have to wait till late summer to start getting news again. I think by the end of June for sure. Like I feel like it's definitely before the end of June. Like I'm thinking early June, like those first couple weeks. But
I think with how much
see.
Nintendo seems to like E3 more than literally any other company that goes there, maybe they will just be like, hey, yeah, we're down for that same E3 spot for the digital event. We're good.
They
Maybe.
loved putting on a
Let's go.
show. They love
Maybe.
putting on a show.
They love making E3 their show.
Yeah, I'm also interested to know how much of that was Reggie, because Reggie's just quite the showman, and we haven't seen Doug do too much yet as far as like that showmanship that
I'm not
Reggie
sure.
had. So
I don't know.
I
if
would
we're gonna
love to
get
see. I would love to see something. But again, even if he's not like front and center being the showman, does he want to put on the big show? Like, so I really don't know how much Reggie had involved. Like, oh, we're gonna do a big show for E3. I'm going to push this as hard as I can because I love doing this stuff. But at the same time, Doug Bowser is from marketing, so
Yeah,
He's done a few
nice
things,
guy.
he's done a couple.
Like he
He
did
might
have
be one of
remember
those
that
guys
one
who-
interview he had with Reggie where they were sort of asking questions to each other, and then obviously when Reggie was stepping down, Reggie sort of introduced Doug in a direct. Like there are some moments, but just not a lot. I'll tell you that the other day, Brandon and I were looking at kind of like older directs, and what we noticed is that back during the Wii U era, Nintendo had a lot of showmanship because they had to make up for the fact they didn't have games to show off. Nowadays, though, there's so much to talk about and show off in terms of just straight up
So much
game
smoke and
announcements.
mirror
They
stuff,
barely
yeah.
have time to have the showmanship because if they put that in there, these presentations become a lot longer. I feel like they're better for it, but you know, that could have something to do with it. Like maybe we're not going to see those things because there's not a need for it.
True. It might
Maybe.
again, like you're talking like Doug from marketing, and it's one of those things where you're definitely right. There's more to show off, and maybe because we've talked about the pace of directs and stuff in the past. And people talk about it all the time when a direct happens, and those little showmanship parts, unless they really hit home, they really kind of
Yeah.
Some people
grind the
might just
direct
find
to
it
a halt.
cringy, or if it's about
A
something
lot of it is.
Yeah, and if
Yeah.
you're not
And if you
part
look
of the
at a
Nintendo
lot of-
faithful, you might not care about Reggie shooting lasers from his eyes. You might just think it's stupid.
And
But
like
if
a lot
you
of those
are,
things,
oh.
a lot of those things work. Like look at some of Reggie's like best moments. We love them, but they are cringy.
Oh yeah, I mean it's on purpose.
Yeah. So
Here's another angle. Those times when Nintendo was doing that was when the audience for Nintendo was smaller than it has been, at least during the Switch era. Like the people who were paying attention to the directs back then were mostly the hardcore Nintendo faithful that will eat up everything Nintendo does.
Yeah.
Now they're appealing to a much broader audience. So again, it's kind of another reason why maybe they won't do that, because it doesn't always
still
come off
think-
well for everyone.
You can go to E3 and not put on like a weird show though. They can go to E3 and have just a direct, but at E3 during the digital thing, just
Yeah.
for the brand.
Yeah, no,
alone.
yeah. I think they
'Cause
can still have that.
Nintendo Direct versus E3 Nintendo Direct is like, like you just put E3 on it. Like it doesn't even have to, like, it's a digital event. They literally could just do it during the same week, not do anything, and just be like, yeah, this is E3, guys. It's definitely E3 for sure.
it's essentially what they do.
It says E3 right here.
Their E3 directs, like they never did anything at E3. Their stuff at E3 was their show on the floor, and their big like show floor events with just all the Zelda stuff, all the Zelda themed stuff. There was wasn't E3, but the Animal Crossing one where it's like you're walking, it's like the water's coming in from on this, like that was some really, like they like to put on those big shows, and they're really neat when you get to see them, which is one thing I'm kind of disappointed with not having a physical E3. But
Yeah. So Beverly Carter added me. Beverly said, so do you anyone have E3 predictions for Nintendo Digital event as a finale month? I guess it might be somewhere in the quarters halves. I'll say that for like predictions, we've already sort of touched on it already, but I'm thinking it's going to be very similar to E3 2018, except instead of it being the first half a whole bunch of other Nintendo announcements and the second half being Smash Brothers, this time around it's going to be first half, make those announcements for games that are coming on the second half of 2021, and that second half is entirely Zelda focused. Not just Breath of the Wild 2, but that will be a big one. Then another couple of things like an Age of Calamity trailer, a Skyward Sword trailer, maybe something else in there on top of that. Then a big Breath of the Wild 2 deep dive, and then after that they transition into Treehouse footage of Breath of the Wild 2 and the other games that were shown off in the presentation. I feel like you guys just agree with me, so just nothing to add.
Pretty much. If it's happening, I'd say that's probably most likely how it's going to happen.
We'll see. But let's transition to Monster Hunter Rise. So, as I said at the beginning, I'm really excited about this game. I feel like it will be disappointing if someone sleeps on this, because I feel like it's the most ambitious, most impressive Switch game we've had in a really long time. I was thinking about it earlier. Like, I'm still fairly early on in the game, but I feel like this game might be better than any game I personally played in 2020. Maybe 2019 as well. Like, I don't know. Like, it could be like a top 5 Switch game for me. I'm not sure yet. Still early on. There have been some good games. I really enjoyed Paper Mario Origami King. I really enjoyed Fire Emblem Three Houses. Luigi's Mansion 3 was not bad. Astral Chain was pretty good. But, you know, like, this is the kind of game to me, it's like, hey, you have a Switch, what should you get? You should get Monster Hunter Rise, along with Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Smash Brothers. Like, it's, I don't know, man. It's kind of screaming that kind of quality to me. Like, this is like a showcase of the Switch.
It's very much a showcase. I mean, it is, in my opinion, easily the best looking game on the platform. To go like a showcase before this, you're basically looking at something that made the Switch chug, which is not a good showcase, or you're looking at Breath of the Wild.
Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
Smash Ultimate, which is a 2.5D game.
Again, it's a different kind of show. Like Smash Ultimate, it looks great, but at the same time, like, you're in a much smaller environment. You're not loading as much in. You're not. Like, you don't have to do any tricks for the background. You know what's.
Oh, you definitely do. I think the problem is that people perceive things as more difficult to run. Because a 2D game can be just as demanding or more than a full open world Breath of the Wild style game. It all depends on where your limitations are. Like, you can have a game that literally has no textures. It's just polygons and, like, ray trace lighting. And that would never work on the Switch. You know, it just depends. It's like what people perceive as a showcase is different. Like, Luigi's Mansion 3 is a 1,000,000% a showcase. In fact, it's more of a showcase than Breath of the Wild, just because Breath of the Wild is not really a showcase for the Switch. It's a showcase for the Wii U that also works well on the Switch. It doesn't show off what the Switch hardware is capable of. It simply does not do that. And, you know, some people find certain things to be more of a showcase than other things. So it really just depends on what your version of a showcase title is.
I'll tell you that I was watching a review, and I'm not going to drop any names. I'm not trying to throw any salt or shade. But I was watching a review from a big place, and one of the people said they think this game looks bad. And I was like, I was like vibing with the review for the most part. But then they said, I think this game looks just bad. And I was like, huh? Did you play the game? Did we play it? Like, what? I'll tell you that when you look at the demo, I feel like it's not as great of it doesn't, for some reason, the first area in Monster Hunter just doesn't seem to scream really amazing visuals as much as some of the other areas in the game. I don't think it's bad, but I guess maybe because like some of the geometry with the terrain is, you can see the polygons, right? Like maybe that's what they could have been sort of noticing.
I think there's also just a lot of aliasing in that first level, because there's a lot more like small details, a lot more fine-grained texture detail.
True. There's a lot of foliage and trees. You're basically in a mountainous jungle with the rivers.
So you're seeing just constant fizzling and aliasing, just like literally the entire screen has aliasing on it almost all times. Which is like the snow level, where you got more like just more plain white texture for the snow. You have less leaves. All the branches on the trees don't have leaves because it's winter. It's a lot more less small fine detail that's gonna get absolutely demolished.
The snow area and the desert area I've gone to explore already, and both of them to me are like, whoa, this looks pretty impressive. Like there are moments when I'm like, is this a Switch game? Like I definitely, I have those moments because it does remind me somewhat of Monster Hunter World. Like, at a glance, you're like, oh, is that Monster Hunter World? Like, it does look pretty good.
Yeah. I've seen screenshots of it like, oh, is that Monster? Oh, that's Rise. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, depending on what you're looking at the time, it can be confused as. See, my issue with a comment like that, like, oh, I don't think the game looks very good, is you need something else with that. Don't just say, oh, well, I don't think it's that good looking of a game. So say what your issue is with the game, because if you don't like the issue, if your only issue with the game is you don't like the graphical style, sure. If your issue with the game is you don't like the resolution, I'm definitely not with you on that. But you know what? To each their own. Don't care. If it's, especially in a review, I feel like you have to explain what it is that you don't like rather than saying it. Because if you're saying something, if you don't like the way the game looks and you tell me why, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't care about that, then that's not a knock against the game for me. But if you tell me what it is about the game, it's like, well, I don't like the way the game runs. Okay, well, explain. It's like, well, in these areas you drop down, like you lose like half your frame rate suddenly. It's like, oh, okay, that's something I care about. If it's, oh, every once in a while in here it drops from 30 frames a second to 28 frames a second, I don't care. That's not something that matters to me, but it matters to other people. See,
28 frames per second
in
one moment of an hour-long playthrough? Ugh, disgusting.
But like
repulsive.
It's something that some people care about. So if you're going to make comments like that, like issues with how it runs or what it looks like, I feel like you really need to say what you mean. Like, I'm not even saying like back up your opinion, because it's your opinion. It's yours.
I just want more context for why you think that way. Yeah.
Just so that I can then, especially on a review, so that I can judge whether or not I'm going to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, well, it doesn't even hit 1080p, it's like, well, there's plenty of stuff that is like 700, like 720 or lower that looks perfectly fine to me. So, if that's your only issue, whereas if it's like, oh, you go to this area and the water suddenly looks like sand and all your colors are completely off, it's like, okay, well, that might be a little jarring and something I'm not up for, like it. So everyone's different. So if you're gonna, I feel if someone's gonna make a comment like that in a review, at least explain it so people know.
Yeah. I
agree.
My personal opinion is just the game looks amazing. I think it looks really good. Yeah. Are there parts that are not perfect? Absolutely, for sure. But it's just overall, like, I'm just impressed with the textures and the pseudo-realism of it. And I do feel like it's not just like, for example, there are games that go for realism. And by going for realism, it just, you lose something. It doesn't always appeal too much. Like, there's not great colors. There's not very beautiful art styles. It just looks realistic. And you're like, oh, okay, it looks realistic. But it's not necessarily beautiful. This is beautiful. This game is beautiful. There's a lot of very pretty, picturesque areas. Everything's very beautiful, I would say. There's a lot of really strong design behind everything. Even the hub town is beautiful, like with the cherry blossom trees and then the river in the background, the mountains. Like, it's just
so many small details just everywhere.
details are nuts.
Yeah. Oh, that's another interesting thing. So like, I love the cutscenes when you're eating food and you see the cats dance around, because you can see those cutscenes. Not even just those, just like the cutscenes in general. Like for example, when you first start the game and you see the maidens walk into your house. Like you see,
it's got that this beautiful bokeh depth of field,
right? And the lighting. There's something about the lighting that just seems very. I mean, there's some realism to it, but it's also not entirely realistic as well. But it just fits really well. It's a beautiful thing, and the motion fits really well. The animations seem really smooth, and it's just everything about this game is visually appealing.
It's the RE engine, man. It's the RE engine at work using its features.
Wizardry, man.
To its potential.
Yeah. That's very impressive.
That, like the videos to introduce the areas and the monsters, like this stuff has always existed, but oh my god, it looks they're so good. Like these like little details and things they put in that you're like, you'd explain that to someone, they'd kind of scoff at it, and then you watch them every time you fight a new monster, every time you hit a new area, and you're like, this is good.
yeah it's it just looks great.
Mean, it's the most advanced engine that's run on the Switch, so it kind of makes sense. Like there's just so many feature sets that it has that just aren't in almost like most Nintendo games.
Do you guys think this is the most technically impressive Switch game?
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, not just by like, oh wow, this looks really great, but go online with 4 players, 4 animals, 2 monsters fighting in the same zone, a bunch of little monsters around. The thing doesn't chug.
Have you guys seen when 2 monsters fight each other, and sometimes one monster is bigger will grab an already giant monster and just swing and thrash it around, and you're just like, you're running around this super realistic open area, then you come across this and you're just like, this is happening. Like it's very immersive, I would say, because it makes me kind of believe like, whoa, all of this is happening in this space. Like I feel like I'm almost in a real world right now.
There's a lot of
it's crazy
things everywhere. Bugs, animals, all kinds of wildlife. The endemic life really makes the world feel a lot more real.
And like again, it's little. Like there's so many little details that just make the game like Kimura Village. Like walking around that and actually paying attention to little things in there.
Moving parts.
Yeah. Like I was talking to you guys before the stream, before the podcast. When you go into the hub, immediately turn left. And there's 2 cats banging on a drum to the tune of the song for Kimura Village that fades away as you walk away from it. Stand there for a little bit and watch them. Like it's little details like that. They're just
something I'm curious about. Did they play a different song if you change the BGM?
I don't know. I assume
they just change it to whatever you have on at the moment.
I'll tell you that there's a fair amount of music in the game. Because it's not just like one track per area. Like the music shifts depending on where you are, even within a particular area. Like for this podcast, I have the Kamura main like track for the Kamura town, and I think it's beautiful. But even within the town, when you approach certain different parts of the town, that music does shift a little bit. And there's different little things that you can hear. I don't know the name of the song, but when you go to the training area or the room before the training area, it has its own separate song, and it's just like, whoa. Like there's a lot of chorus in there, and it sounds beautiful. When I was fighting the Baroth earlier, it was exciting because I fought Baroths before in previous Monster Hunter games, but this might have been one of my favorites just because I didn't play World, so that has something to do with it. World is also apparently a really good game. But hearing the track they had for the Baroth, it just made it seem really epic. And seeing how well realized the Baroth is this time around, like it looks very different compared to the Baroth in like 3DS, because it's a far more realistic art style, and you can see a lot more of the geometry of this creature. It's far better realized, and it was just it was an impressive experience. I also saw it climbing mountains, which was kind of weird for me to see this giant creature with a big rock for a head just climb over mountains. Like, how is this possible? But man, it was an experience for sure.
One that really surprised me, Rathalos has some new animations, new attacks. Specifically, it's fire, and I was just like, it did one. I was like, whoa, I haven't seen that before, and that looked great.
Nice.
So there's so many
Yeah.
little things, little changes.
And
We're
right
not
now we're
even
just
talking about features yet. Oh my god.
No, we're not. We're just really just talking about graphics and music here. The aesthetics, the presentation of this game are very, very
Yeah.
high. And you
Oh,
brought
yeah.
up the little the cutscenes earlier. Like whenever you see a monster, they have like a little poem to introduce the monster, which I think is really cool because it kind of goes the whole feudal Japan sort of like motif.
Those
And
cutscenes are so cool.
yeah, I really appreciate that. I think theme is probably the appropriate word, not motif, but whatever. It's just great. And then there's a lot of different. I'm actually surprised with all the different monster designs there are. And I know I'm just kind of scratching the surface here. And then of course there's the free updates. We're going to be getting a lot more monsters. There's the Apex Rathlos, which I think looks insane. Like I'm not even sure. Like this game is going to give me hundreds of hours of gameplay.
Yeah, this is actually a fairly low number of monsters for base Monster Hunter, but we've also just launched and they're adding a bunch through DLC, so we don't know what it's going to actually turn out as.
I'm
As
pretty
far as
sure what
content
they
goes,
have
I'm
so
pretty happy so far.
It's good to get us to April. Like I think that'll be fine.
Some people are complaining about it, and I'm like, how far along are you actually in the game? Like, some people let's say, oh, well, there's only this many monsters. Well, that's not enough. It's like, dude, you're still low rank.
If you compare
And then other
it to,
people, like, so you rushed it and you played 20 hours a day for 3 days, and now you're complaining that there's not much to do. It's like, you put 60 hours into the game already. Like,
that's more than most games are.
that's...
Yeah.
So
but
if you're going to do that, it's like, well, either you need to find another way to keep it fresh, or you got to wait for the next.
I have a question, and
DLC.
I don't. You may not know the answer for this, but one of the beginning cutscenes, when your character walks outside, they see a strange flying creature in the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know what that is yet?
No.
That's exciting.
Oh,
I'm excited. Like just the mystery behind this crazy flying creature in the clouds. Like what is that thing? Like that's exciting. It's just
I would imagine we're going to find out at some point in time with what we already have, like in the game right now on launch day. But I am not through everything, so I don't actually know. But at this point, it's a mystery.
Yeah. Oh. So I do want to kind of transition a little bit to kind of like the gameplay though. So we sort of touched on it earlier, but the environments are very fun to explore. Now that I've explored a little bit more of the ice area, I've just sort of touched the desert area with that Baroth battle. But I've noticed that each area has kind of like a different feel to it. There's different things kind of going on. Like in the ice area, I discovered that in the different ponds, there's like these creatures that sort of fly around in the water and they give you boosts. So most of the time you find like these birds that give you boosts, right? Just exploring the different map. Like it's fun just to explore the maps because you can find different animals, you collect them, herbs and plants, and they sort of all fuse together to give you automatic, boosts and perks. But in the ice area, they have a whole other like different type of like collectible. There are these flying creatures that give you additional boosts and power-ups, which I thought to be kind of fun because you kind of have to like chase them around. It's a little bit of a mini game.
You haven't found a relic yet, have you?
The like this like hidden sword or something like that, or a scroll.
Yeah,
I found a few actually. Yeah.
Those. So
Yeah.
I was looking through the hunter notes. It would appear as if there are 10 in each zone.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and some of these are not easy. Think of it kind of like Korok seeds. Okay, so you look off in the distance and you're like, that looks really hard to get to. I bet you there's something there. And maybe there isn't, maybe there isn't. I've gone to some of those places like, nope, nothing here. And I've gone to others where it's like, there's one right there. There's others where it's like, it's literally like, there's a crack in the wall that when you're running by, it just looks like shadow. And then when you get closer, you're like, oh, no, that's a crack. And then you walk in, there's a relic.
Something in there.
I don't know how much time I don't want to look up where these things are. I just want to like search for them. Even
there's
at some point in time, go out with
to these maps. They're
Yeah,
very
go
deep.
with a group of friends and just, we're not fighting anything. We're just gonna go look. We're gonna find
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like,
There's all kinds. Even the first map. I mean, we played the demo a bunch, and I still went back and like, oh, there's like this tunnel that runs through the middle of the map. I had no idea was here. Wow, this is very convenient. Or there'll be some kind of endemic life I didn't notice, or something like that. So there's always
so
something to
much.
explore on the map.
Yeah, I'm still
I've-
discovering things, like even in the first map, because we played a lot of it
Yeah.
with the demo. Like I definitely put a few dozen hours into the demo, and I'm still learning things about that particular area. I'm still discovering things about that particular area, and the other areas are larger, which is interesting.
Oh yeah.
Like they are significantly larger, and there's a lot of other secrets to find in them.
I'm honestly happy. Like I've thought about in the demo, like really exploring that map to really know everything in it, and I'm actually pretty happy I didn't, because I would imagine there's no relics on that map, and if I had to go back through all that exploration, like
Yeah.
I get so turned around sometime that middle mountain around like 5,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah,
like
five's pretty confusing.
I've explored that place inside and out, I feel, and then every
It's like
time
a
I go back, there's
loop.
something new that I didn't notice.
Yeah.
There's also a very confusing like spiral in the middle of the map.
Yeah. Oh, it's so. Oh, that map.
What's great about
I
it
love-
is
I love how
'cause
that map
the
is
maps
done.
are finally open, right? So it's not like in
Yeah.
excluding Monster Hunter World, previous Monster Hunter games just had these segmented areas, and there wasn't much you can do in them. They were basically just sometimes pretty looking arenas. That was basically it. There might be like a couple points where you could collect like some sort of resource or something, but that was pretty much it. Now the environments are far more organic feeling and looking. There's a lot more to the geometry that's all interconnected and open. So it has a bit of a Breath of the Wild feel, because you can kind of choose to explore these openly. There's not necessarily a wrong answer. And as you choose different ways to scale up walls and explore involved and do these different things to traverse, you're going to find those hidden little corners and caverns that have these different relics or endemic life that can give you more boosts, or these birds that give you more power-ups as well. And you'll find different little secrets all throughout as you kind of explore freely and doing things in different ways, like kind of experimenting with what you can do with the wire bug. So it's really fun to sort of just platform and explore. I've never had this much fun exploring a Monster Hunter game before. And I think that's what makes this game better than any previous Monster Hunter. Save for World, I haven't played World, so I can't really speak for that one. I know that one's also really good, but
Personally, I find the exploration here better, because
Yeah.
it feels. I don't know. It feels like I had to do something to actually explore versus run along the path. And then outside of the ancient forest, the first level in World,
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's too many like really weird paths. And ancient forest is a mess, and I hate being in there. But I prefer the way we can discover and look around in Rise.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, from what I have seen of World, like, it does seem like Rise, by comparison, has a lot of different things you can sort of explore and find throughout the environment, how you kind of go about doing that. I mean, I think the wire bug is a huge thing. Like, if they
Oh, yeah.
get away from that, it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of evolve the franchise beyond Rise without a wire bug. I hope they keep it, because it's made exploration way more inviting. Because I guess a common complaint for Monster Hunter games is they can feel a little clunky if you're not used to them. But the games are designed to where you don't move around very quickly with most of the weapon sets, at least. But the wire bug gives you far more mobility now, which speeds up gameplay, which thus makes it more interesting for more people. And it just, exploring has become really fun, but also this also applies to combat too. It gives you way more options in combat, which makes combat even that much more diverse and in-depth. And man, the fights are fun. They're really fun. I mean, that's the core of the game.
Well, it's what you buy the game for, and they nailed it with this one. The other thing is everything's sped up in Rise. So
I noticed that.
again, that was the whole, like, this is built with the portable aspect in mind. So fights are going to be done quicker. They expected like fights to be done faster, you to move faster, you to travel around faster. It'd be, if they don't keep that speed, I feel like it's going to be hard going to like a next gen Monster Hunter without the speed, and then you lose the wire. Like I don't know how they're gonna bring the wire bug along with them on another one, or what they're gonna do besides that. But that just the exploration, the cool things you can do with it. Oh man! But like even the dog, like I have a funny feeling Palamute's coming back no matter what. But like even with that, like you run at a wall.
An equivalent, some
like,
sort of.
I think they're gonna bring. I think they're gonna bring back Palamute because it's another buddy. They have a system in place and it works really really well, and it's great for traveling around the map.
I want to talk about that
it's
for
not
a brief
like
moment, actually.
traveling the map isn't difficult. It's not fun to have to run to the other end of the map for something.
Yeah,
and it doesn't add to difficulty. It just adds to annoyance.
How do you guys feel about the customization though? Like I actually enjoyed customizing my dog. I was surprised at how much I can kind of do with that. Because like it's not just one or two colors, right? Like you have like several different like parts of the dog that you can
have the whole
color.
thing.
Yeah. You can recolor it however you choose basically. And there's different sort of facial features for the dog and tail features for the dog, and you can change around the color of the clothing a little bit. And then you can also design the cat as well. Obviously there's yourself, but most games do that already. Like the fact that you get to design yourself, and there's a decent amount of customization options for that, but then also your dog and your cat, that I loved.
I thought
there's some really cool ones too out there.
Yeah.
One of my friends made Yamper.
Yeah.
Like this is my Yamper. He follows me everywhere. So I don't know. The customization is just phenomenal. We knew the customization from like even Monster Hunter World had really good customization, and then just to bring it forward and Rise and add the Palamutes, and
I just want to show off my dog.
They've done a lot. Like it's good.
Look at my dog. I named him Flair, and I think he's great. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. This game, I'm in love with this game. The music's great, the graphics are great, the dog is great, moving around is great, exploring is fun, and the combat, to your point, also feels sped up. I've noticed that because I usually use a Great Blade, the big giant sword thing, and I'm doing a lot more charge attacks than I used to. I feel like I have more time, and I haven't unlocked like a fast charge yet. It feels faster.
We're also hitting a lot of like lower tier monsters at this point in time, so there's more opportunities. Achnazom in general gives some really, really big openings. Tetranodon, again, some really big openings. That thing is so slow, but it punishes so hard if you mess up. So like there's definitely room for them to really cut down your time unless you know what you're looking for an opening. But in general, it's like the wire. Again, we're talking greatsword, something that you'd have to run up to a monster, charge an attack, and hit it, all in a very narrow amount of time. Well, what if you just have to charge up to within wire bug range, wire bug in, and whack? Like suddenly you're gonna get a lot more big attacks in, and you're gonna get more openings that didn't exist. So your fights are gonna speed up again, and then you can use your wire bug again to sheath it, get an attack boost, to run back in and hit it again with a charged attack and an attack boost. Like it, so many good little things there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing some of that already.
Like a hunting horn, they split like major changes to hunting horn. Very slow weapon has now turned into a very fast weapon. Slide beat, one of the Silkbind moves, it has super armor. You just slide beat through a roar. You just go in, you whack it a few times. Things just move very quickly. Some of the clips from Insect Glaive and what was the one? A big streamer was he posted a clip on Twitter that made me be like, oh, I need to play Gunlance now. And basically he fired a great wire bug, and then while he was in the air, he pulled out the Gunlance and fired himself like across the map multiple times. And then smashed I don't remember what the monster was. It might have been a Diablos. They just like landed on a Diablos and they just cracked it in the head. And he's like, that's how you make an entrance. I'm like, You
Wow.
just cleared half the map, man.
And then
That is
smashed 'em.
wild.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
In like seconds, you just cleared half the map and opened an attack up and
That is
landed.
crazy.
I'm like, this is going to be shown in some sort of speed. This is going to be some sort of speed run strat. Like to clear half the map in like a couple seconds.
So there's another mechanic I
Crazy.
want to touch on, and that is wyvern riding, because that's another new mechanic that we haven't really talked about yet, and that changes things as well. Like you have to you have there's different monsters in the map, then you can kind of bring them close to each other, have them fight each other, and then you can ride one of them and then use that one to pummel the other, or you can use it to run away, go somewhere else, or you could just start crashing it into a wall, or you crash into a wall, trap it, and then you can do more things to it.
Yep. There's
a lot of
so
options.
It's one of those things where I don't know if I want it to continue on in the next games. Again, you'd need to have wire bugs in order to have wyvern riding come in the next game. They tied everything together so well.
At least in the way
It is such a well-designed game, in my opinion. But like, it's a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if I want it in full for the series, but it's definitely more fun than jump on the monster's back and just one damage, one damage, one damage, one damage. Okay, I knocked it down, and now we do big damage. And then it's another one of the things that's sped up. It's like, oh, I'm on it. Turn around, bang it into a wall, it goes down, and we just beat it up, rather than spending 20-30 seconds stabbing it for next to no damage to have it drop down and do it. Now you get one big shot of damage, it goes down, you start beating it up. It's just more things sped up.
Yeah, to me that seems more fun.
Yeah, to be honest, there's just a lot of quality of life things like that probably were introduced in World, but I never played World. All I've experienced with is watching people play the older games and playing the demos. So I know that this one's so much more the controls are just so much better. Everything's so much faster, more honestly, if they go back to the older style, or if they get rid of wire bugs and don't use something else to make up for that, I'm not coming back. I won't. It's not gonna happen. You're either going to make a game that is as fluid and fun and fast again, or I'm just never. It's gonna be okay, Monster Hunter was great. Make another one like this, and I'll play again.
Now, on that note, if the next Monster Hunter comes out and it is a bit slower, and you're I'm out, don't completely shut yourself off from the series, because there are two teams. This is the portable team. And the one before that the portable team did was Monster Hunter Generations and Generations Ultimate. And again, it was very anime-esque and very over the top. Again, we're talking, this is a 3DS game. So if the next one doesn't suit you, don't just write off the whole series. Take a look at the next portable one to see if that, maybe you're just more into the portable team than the main team. So there is other stuff still there for you, even if the next one doesn't quite suit you.
Yeah, for sure.
I do feel that there is something. They're just moving in a direction, right? Because Rise took a lot of elements from World. A lot of the quality of life improvements that are in World are also in Rise, and they're doing more. So who's to say that the next Monster Hunter game won't continue with what they did with World, but also continue with some of the changes they had in Rise as well. Probably not everything, but some of those things that perhaps will make things better for people, like the sped up gameplay.
Yeah.
Every game in the series has its own thing, and so we're expecting wire bugs to be the Rise thing.
Yeah.
I
mean, the wire bug is an indigenous creature to Kamara or the areas around Kamara, right? So it makes sense.
Yeah, so it'd be a little bit harder to lore-wise have that make sense, and they also they want the games to feel different every installment, so you remember. It's not yes, they're trying to make the best game they can, but it's not if you turn around and say, well, the 4th gen or 3rd gen was my favorite because of this game and I like these mechanics. They're not going to be well, how dare you, we put our heart and soul into this. It's wait, some mechanics speak more to other people. So they're trying to make the game different, because if it was still the same game, but they take the same game, they update it, and then give it a spin, and that's worth so much more than just giving the game a little update each time, and it's part of what makes people really like the series and why they stick with it so strongly is because there is going to be something unique about every game. It's not just going to be like, well, I just played 5,000 hours of this game, now I'm going to jump into this thing. It's going to be exactly the same, but I'm starting at the beginning. So it is all going to to be very different.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that with
I mean, like,
a lot of games, actually. Go on,
There are other series like that, like Zelda.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
every single Zelda game is so much different. 3D Mario, they're all so much different. So I can accept that. It's more like, as long as it isn't slow again. Like, if they can get rid of wire bugs, but I want them to bring in something else.
Yeah.
Like, don't just completely be like, okay, we're just going to be much slower game now.
Now, that said, now that you are getting used to Monster Hunter combat and the flow of it, the game is going to feel like it handles a lot better. Like it's one thing, new players, the big thing to the series is that people come in and they're always like, I can't stand it. It's clunky and it's unresponsive. And a lot of it comes down to how you approach the combat system.
Yeah, you have to think completely differently.
Yeah, it's an action RPG, but it's not an action game in a lot of senses. So just for people, because I can't remember, I think it was TC in chat was asking whether or not I recommended the game or people recommend the game, and I said with an understanding of what you're getting into. So I'll just kind of explain that right now. The combat system in Monster Hunter Rise is based around oh my god, just lost the word. It's based around commitment. So
yes,
when you are doing an attack, a combo, whatever, you are committing a certain amount of time to doing an attack. When you're charging up your great sword and you're going to land an attack, you're committing that much time, not only to the attack, but to the recovery of the attack. Because, I mean, when you're swinging a sword that's the size of your body, of like steel, it's not just going to hit the ground and be like, well, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Crash it to the ground. You're going to need some time to pull it back out.
Yep. Now you can cut that down by rolling. So it hits to the ground, you roll, and that actually makes sense. So, but it's very commitment based. But the thing is, the monsters also are tied to the same system of commitment. So monsters will commit themselves to a big attack and also the recovery frames. So in order to play Monster Hunter, what the essence of the combat system is, wait for their attack, avoid it to put yourself in a good position, and punish the recovery. So you're always thinking about, what are they committing to? Now what can I commit to? And that's kind of the big thing in Monster Hunter as far as how the combat system goes. And when you have an understanding of that and you know what you're looking at, it suddenly doesn't feel near as clunky, because it does not feel great when you first get in. It's not about
being fast, it's about pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have lots of time. You have lots of time to finish a hunt. You got to learn the patterns of the monsters, so you have to watch them. They'll attack, they'll give openings, you just have to find them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
It's just, I think the biggest thing that helped me as a new player to figure out how to approach the game was just thinking, it was like that commitment idea. It's like, if I do something, I almost had to think of it as a turn-based RPG. I was like, okay, if I do this move, this is the move I selected. Like, there's no undoing it. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, there are some certain ways of canceling sometimes, but usually no. Like, if you do a move, like, you did it. Like, so you have to think about that, and you have to think, like, about, like, just, you can't spam. You need to be slow. You need to dedicate. Like, if you do something, it has to have a purpose. If you're hitting a button and you don't have a purpose for it, you're just gonna mess yourself up, because you're gonna combo into something you had no idea you were comboing into, and you're just gonna end up doing another animation that makes you even longer, that messes you up even more, and you die.
Yeah. I am so happy you made that point, and you
have to slow down.
So before I started thinking in terms of commitment, the one comment that had things sink in better to me was, view it as a turn-based game. They're gonna let them have their turn, and you just play defense, and then it's your turn for offense, and then it's their turn for offense, your turn for defense, and then it's your turn for offense. And that turn-based idea, I'm so happy you brought that up, because that really helped things click for me too.
That makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it like that. I just I still kind of, there is definitely timing for me, but like, one of the things I started doing, which is cool because it's a wire bug, it just kind of sped up my gameplay, right? Because the greatsword's a very slow moving weapon set, but like with the wire dash, where you can jump forward and you sheath, but you gain a power up. Like I've started using that almost like as a way to dodge after I do an attack. But I still don't like do an attack. I always look for the openings where I know it can't just wail on me, right? Like I'll try and hit the head, but I might try and hit the head from the side. That way it can't just be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna ram into you. But once it turns around, I'm like, oh, okay, wire dash out, sheath my sword, power up, I'll come in, run in, do another slash. If I can charge up a combo because it kind of exposes itself, I'll do it. If not, I have to wait. You know, I can't just always go for the big attack.
That's a good point. Positioning is very important. You can't just walk up to the monster and position yourself any which way you please. Like, you really have to always be moving, always trying to position yourself around the best part of the body for the most damage or the safest position or whatever you need. If you want to break a certain part, you're always going to need to be moving. Like, if you're, unless you have a really slow weapon, a lot of times you're going to want to be just moving around the monster, getting into position, not standing still.
Yeah, another part of like punishing recovery is their turnaround to face you, and it's not quite like. So for people that are new coming in Rise, it's not as apparent as it was back on the 3DS, but monsters have a very specific turnaround animation, and each monster's turnaround generally in either a quarter turn or a half turn. So if they're facing behind you and they are now targeting you, say you're solo and they're targeting you, they're going to turn to face you. So there's 3 ways that they can do it. 1 is that they're going to attack behind them. 2 is that they're going to quarter turn. So they're going to turn. And the other ways they're going to turn the full 180. And that's how you head snipe. So if you know it's a quarter turn, you know, okay, well, this is where its tail is. Its head's going to be about here when it's finished its turn to look at me. So you wind up with your greatsword across it. So the arc comes across, so you hit it. And that's where you start like clipping heads when you want to. It's just a matter of getting the timing down. That still exists. It's just harder to see because the animations are so much more fluid.
Yeah, there's a lot more animation frames now.
Yeah, and a lot of similar skeletons will turn around in the exact same manner. So Rathalos and Rathian are going to turn around the exact same way.
Interesting.
Just things to think. Again, like just to have an understanding going into Monster Hunter just makes it that much better and that much more enjoyable. Because if you go in thinking it's, because people are always like, oh, it's like Dark Souls, and you go in playing like it's Dark Souls, you're going to die. It's going to be a bad time for you.
It's different.
The only way it's like Dark Souls is the way you approach it. You have to be very careful. That's about it. That's about as much Dark Souls.
You gotta be
like,
careful.
Yeah. Anybody's like, there's a game where you have to actually think about your attacks. You can't just mash buttons. This is Dark Souls, guys. It's Dark Souls.
You don't win by button mashing. That is something that's true for both Monster Hunter and
You
Dark
take
Souls.
a lot of damage from normal enemies. Dark Souls.
Again, and it's not to say one is better than the other. It's just they have similarities, but they have also big differences where if you try to play them in the same manner, you're not going to do as well.
Also, the thing with Dark Souls is a lot of ways to kind of like be cheap. Oftentimes Dark Souls is almost kind of like figuring out like a way that you can kind of just beat an enemy easily. Monster Hunter is not really like a way to kind of like cheap out an enemy. No, you have to. Okay, maybe I'm wrong there, but like my understanding is that like you can't just get them stuck for the entire time and just wail out all their health. You have to.
Not normally. You're not supposed to. I'm sure there's like high level speed run ways of doing things, but
okay, so
not normal people
like,
are not going to do this.
You can't push down a monster off a cliff and have it die. You can't do that.
No. Unfortunately, not. That would be absolutely hilarious, though. But there are things like so. I'm more familiar with
parts though, even if you could.
Well, you don't have any fall damage, so you're good.
Not if it's off the map.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
That would suck. Oh, you get the rewards afterwards. Anyways, so I'm more familiar with stuff in Generations Ultimate because I put far more time into that than than World and Iceborne. There's little things like Zinogre has like almost like instead of quarter turns has like eighth turns, but it's not like he doesn't turn around in eighths. It's if you step off to the side, he'll do a little micro adjustment to face you. So a great sword will step off to the side, charge up, arc over them, step off to the other side, charge up, arc over him, and he'll just keep going back and forth, just taking shots to the face, and it's hilarious to watch. It's kind of cheesy, but it works really well. Then there's other ones. They had I'm not even thinking of words right now. I can't think of names. Anyways, there was a monster for a very big quest, and people were speed running it because it is how you got charms, and it was the big RNG farm. Charms, decorations, whatever. Anyways, it was the big RNG farm, and so people would work on it, and you have like speed run teams like Team Darkside is like this is what we do, and this is how you can consistently get 2-minute runs. And they would go in with I think it was 3 heavy longbows and a light, or oh my god, 3 heavy bow guns and a light bow gun, and the light bow gun would lock the thing down and it would not move from its place until it was dead, and the heavy bow guns would just destroy it. And it's like they get going and they know exactly, they're on this shot, it's going to get paralyzed. I have this much time. I'm going to set up these. I'm going to put a trap underneath it. Okay, now I'm going to start at this here, and it's going to fall asleep at this time. And then, so like everything was really timed out and mapped out. And you still kind of do that. I don't know if there's going to be anything quite like that in World. Or it's not in World, in Rise. And I don't know if there's anything quite like that in World because I was not paying attention. I was too busy playing Generations Ultimate.
So, before we get to the questions, so guys, if you have any final questions, I know there's a few put in the chat. We'll get to them. Just one more point I want to talk about for Monster Hunter Rise, and then we're closing things out after the questions. How do you guys feel about the multiplayer so far? Like, because this game you can play pretty much entirely multiplayer. Like, it's
Right.
like maybe the best co-op game on Switch.
I think it works amazingly well. Andres, we've played probably 10-15 hours together so far.
Oh, if you account for the demos, yeah.
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 And very minimal issues. Like, there's been like one time I noticed lag. Like, there might be lag other times that I didn't notice, but noticeable lag to me was just once. I can literally only count one time.
Same thing.
You like
One time
teleported for me, or oh yeah, you said that a monster like hung for you, and I was like, what? That must have been lag. Like,
Yeah,
it
was
wasn't
just for
even
a
on
moment.
my end. It was literally just you.
Yeah, and it happened only for a moment, and everything was fine. So I haven't
Oh,
had
and in the
lag
demo-
issues or anything.
In the demo, we
Yeah.
saw one that Andres didn't.
Yeah,
when he
as
was
I too
recording,
busy
which
healing.
unfortunately, but it like just
Oh, I forget
slid
about that.
sideways across the map
It
on
would have
us.
been
We're
great
like,
if I
wait,
had,
wait,
the-
what?
had
Yeah.
the video form of that. And-
Yeah, that did happen.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
But
So
other
two
than that,
times.
like I've seen that, and at one point in time, I was going through the volcano. We were running to another location on the Palamutes, and the person I was with started like jitter teleporting, and then by the
Might have been
very
that
soon,
connection.
very soon after, it like stabilized, and there was no problems. Like the game is like it makes Splatoon look real bad. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it
makes
real bad.
Literally every other Nintendo
It makes
online
Smash
game
look
really
bad. It makes like
Like, even Mario Kart doesn't work this well, and Mario Kart works really well.
yeah,
Monster Hunter
and
Rise
it,
has
like
just become like this, like the gold standard for how how to run a game on Switch. Like it's the best graphically. Like it has an exorbitant amount of content. The online is handled better. There's no voice chat options, so there's that. But
I can't understand how the rampages don't make the game chug.
Dude, yes. When I first saw Rampages, I was like, oh no.
We're talking 5 monsters on screen. There's what, 5? I want to say 10 NPCs shooting siege weapons. You're shooting siege weapons. There's the 4 of you. Your 4 Palamutes. Yeah, the 5 dogs. Effects going off. There's there's 2 or
They don't
3
even
bamboo
rely on
bombs on the
dynamic
ground.
resolution. It's a
Like-
fixed resolution game. Like, it doesn't scale. Like, that's
And
that's
all the
crazy thing
effects.
for me.
and all of the effects, like it.
haven't done this
I'm
part
blown
yet.
away. Yeah, I'm blown away by the game.
Yeah,
Like,
I want to try it. I've only seen it.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll probably
it's,
play a little bit tonight. That's for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Suggestion: when you are in the hub
Okay.
and you have to do your first rampage, and they mention Apex, do what you can to not do that alone. I did one with 4 people because it was posted by a random person online. We're like, sure, whatever, we'll give it a shot. It was all right. It was a lot of fun. I did it solo, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I-
I think most.
I
of
can't
this
believe
game
I
I'm gonna
got through-
play online.
I can't believe I got through it, but absolute nightmare.
Wow.
Like I'm gonna play through the story missions to like get. I think you unlock things by doing that. I'm not even sure if you have to. Do
You
the
don't know.
story.
The story is for the story.
Okay, so I'll do it for the story just to see what it is, but most of the game I'm gonna be playing like online. with
'Cause-
people. That's like why I bought the game.
I'm pretty sure everything else can be unlocked in either village or hub, because I think a lot of them are behind sub quests, which you can complete
Yeah.
anywhere.
Oh well, yeah. It seemed Hub unlocked things in my in the village
Yep.
in like unlock progression for me, and I was like, oh, I don't have to do single player to unlock these new skills. And like I was wondering, because you can craft armor and weapons, but you can only craft up to a certain point, and then it's just like a question mark. It's blocked off, and it doesn't explain how to unlock it. And I was like, oh, it's probably story, but no, I just did. I got to the level 2, the 2 rank on the
Yeah.
hub with Andres, and it unlocked. I was like, oh, sweet.
Yes, some of it is your ranking, and others are you need a specific monster part to have the weapon show.
Mm. Yeah,
So
I
it-
noticed that as well.
So it's just a matter of hunting things like crazy to get those like 1% drops.
Yeah.
But no, like they do both. And then if you complete the entire storyline in Village, you can do depending on where you are in the hub. If you've done none of it, you get a series of quests to increase your rank in the hub, so you can actually skip low rank
Oh.
if
Oh,
you.
nice.
So
Makes
if
sense.
if you push through Village first, you can skip low rank in the hub,
'cause I
and
was
then
kinda
just
worried
pick
about,
up
like,
from there.
Can you do it the other way around?
You can't skip it, but if you go, let's put it this way. Village is incredibly easy. So
I've noticed that the monsters in Village, like when I do single player, like I'm just kind of blowing through them.
yeah, so in the hub, monsters are they scale to how many players are in the fight. And it does it dynamically. So if someone DCs in the middle of a fight, you're not fighting a stronger monster. It's going to knock back
Oh,
down.
that's
And then if
really
they
good.
manage to come back in, it scales back up and all those things.
That's great.
Speaking of that we're going to talk about coming back in and that stuff. That's so good. But Village is single player toned down, and they did that for new players. The problem with that is that experienced players blow through it. I still think it's the right call on their on their behalf, because the hub feels great, the game feels great, and it gives another way for players to get into the game in something that's a little bit more manageable. And
Sure.
my only concern with it being too easy, at least for me, is again, if I talk about Gen Ultimate, it feels like me doing Village in Gen Ultimate at high rank, which we don't have access to until the next version of the game. So it felt like doing that with G rank end game sets, like where you're just bullying monsters that badly, and that was with late low rank stuff.
Interesting. I'll
So
tell you that
I feel like
it
it's
makes
scaled
sense.
back quite a ways.
I think it makes sense because it's also the game's geared for portability, right? When you're playing in the hub, you're playing online.
Yeah.
So you're set up to be playing for longer play sessions. But when you're playing portably, you're likely playing in the village, correct? You're going to get resources that way. If you want to farm, maybe it's easier to play single player to get better resources, right? Or at least just to go through that very quickly. It's quick. It's geared towards shorter play sessions because you just wallop the enemies that way. I've noticed that. So, and also I think it's a great point you brought up that is also going to make it more approachable for a lot more players. And a lot of people, the mainstream, is portability, right? So more people are going to be playing it portably. They're going to steamroll single player, and they're like, all right, I'm ready to go online, and then everything's going to change for them. But by that point, they'll know how to play the game.
Yeah, and then just because
Yeah.
I have to talk about this. Not only does it scale dynamically, but say you have someone in your lobby that is taking their sweet time and staring at gear, and you're like, you know what, we just want to go knock this out. You and say 2 people can just go ahead, and we're like, well, we'll see you. And we've done this, by the way. It's like, we'll see you in there, and we go and we start hunting, and then our friends finish what they were doing. They take the quest and they join us wherever we are in the
Sure.
hunt. I had one. A friend was busy, and I'm like, well, I'm just soloing stuff in ranked. Here's the room code. And then I didn't even realize, I didn't even see the prompt or hear anything for him coming into the room. I was fighting, and all of a sudden something else was bashing the monster in the face, and I'm like, oh, I guess my friend is here. And there's Merrick now. And that's who it was.
Wow.
So it was like, it's little things like that that make the game so much nicer, and the fact that you could disconnect and then get back in, and I haven't even seen a disconnect yet, which is wild.
This everything about this game just seems to be, they're doing everything right. Sure, this game may not be as long as a few other Monster Hunter games because they wanted to get it out now, but everything about this game is super polished and well done, and they're going to be continually adding more content, not just extra monsters, but more story and things of that nature. So and they're free updates. Like, I'm sure eventually they're going to have like a paid expansion, but we're going to be getting free updates that will continually lengthen the gameplay of the game as well. So there's a lot here. I'm very excited about it. But before we close things out, I want to get to the chat. I know there's a few things that were brought up to me in the chat that I want to get to. Me taking a look here. Taker610 provided a super chat. Thank you very much, Taker. A new fiscal year this week. Lots of news incoming? Question mark. We sort of touched on this because we were talking about the potential for Zelda news soon. It's going to be interesting to see if we get some sort of interesting quotes from Nintendo executives. Maybe there's something we can extrapolate there. It's usually subtle. If anything, it's never anything super, super major, but I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for any clues.
There is going to be lots of news. It's just not going to be the kind of news people are looking for. There's not going to be releases in Zelda news. It's going to be like, again, I'm going to see how many Monster Hunter Rise sales there were like opening up.
Yeah.
Going to see where the Switch is at. It was at like 80 million last time. Like, I want to know where it's at.
Is that 85 now? Maybe 90.
Who knows? Like, we don't know.
Has Animal Crossing become the best-selling Switch title? Probably.
More than likely. I don't see it not.
So that's a great point. Like, we're gonna get news, but maybe not exactly. Like, we're not gonna learn about like Breath of the Wild 2 exactly. I mean, it'd be interesting if like all of a sudden they say like 2021. Like, they could conceivably do, not likely, but they could, right?
So, is there gonna be news? Yes. Is it gonna be what people are excited for? Not so much. Is Andre's gonna make 100 videos on it? More than likely, it's gonna be great because there's something to talk about. There's always something to talk about from these meetings. So it's good for content, some interesting stuff, and I'm going to be keeping my eyes open for that stuff too.
I'll say that
I'm excited to see it.
We have gone some Q&As where there's been some details that we've really like gone back to repeated, like, hey, they said this means something. Like,
well, you know one thing. With how many Switch Pro rumors there are, if Nintendo doesn't come out and again say, hey, like, this isn't happening, I'm gonna be like, oh, it is happening, because last time they were 100% like, nope, guys, nah. Like, look, it's not happening. Like, this year, no. Just stop. Just stop asking. Just stop talking about it. It's not happening. Yeah, in 2020.
Yeah.
So if they don't come out and say something similar this year, I'm like, oh.
They didn't do it in January. They didn't deconfirm it this January.
No.
So January 2020 they deconfirmed. January 2021 they did not. So it is going to be interesting to see that. There could be some Switch Pro implications there. That is a good point. Definitely want to see what's going on there. So, there's going to be things, but just maybe not a Zelda Direct. Not yet. Moving on here with the chat. Joshua Ayers, Andres, glad you were enjoying Monster Hunter Rise. I might give the demo another chance. That is if I can peel myself away from Animal Crossing. Good night and great podcast. Thank you very much. I hope you also have a great evening. Birdman, I've been playing multiplayer for the half of the time of Rise, and it's been very smooth and a steady frame rate. Also, I think Rise has rollback netcodes. It has rollback netcodes. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I guess that means
it has like
doesn't suck
the
online.
New... it has the new shit that they're doing.
Yeah, well, it's on the new servers, but it's a rollback netcode. I'm trying to remember the actual how to describe it. I can send you an article later about it that explains the different netcodes and what rollback is and all that stuff.
Yeah, but... I did forget about that though, because Monster Hunter Rise, the demos were taking advantage of the new online systems for Nintendo, and it does seem to be running really well. I've had next to no issues.
I wonder how much of that is just their wizardry with netcode versus on servers that aren't ridiculously old.
Well, it at least bodes well.
Yeah.
I mean, you changed your servers after like over a decade. Oh, suddenly they start being better. This is
what if the reason we haven't gone?
Insane.
What if the reason we haven't gone a new F-Zero is because they know they can't handle 30 cars online, and they know they wouldn't be like, they know that if you're gonna do a new F-Zero, you have to do it with online, and if F-Zero is less than 30, then it's compromised F-Zero.
Maybe.
No idea. I'm also even wondering if Splatoon 3 is coming on the Switch because of the new servers. And if it weren't for the fact that there's new servers and they think they can fix the online that is progressively getting worse and worse in Splatoon 2, I'm wondering how much of that has to do with servers, or if they're trying to get Splatoon 2 onto the new servers right now and it's causing issues. But I could see Splatoon 3, well, part of the big push is we can offer a much better experience. Well, so I'm interested to see how that goes.
I mean, I see a Smash update, please. Like, even if it's not fully fixed, as long as it's like good enough. Like, jeez.
What if it's like Smash? Okay, so we're gonna get 2 more DLC characters this year. What if they have, after those 2 DLC characters, like in the final Sakurai presents, he's like, there will be 1 more final major update for Smash Brothers. We don't know what it is, but it comes later this year. It's after the Switch revision is announced. It's like, this is the final Smash update. 4K version of Smash Brothers, and they add a couple other little things. I'm not saying like new characters or anything like that, but you know, maybe they fix the online, right? Like they address that, and maybe they add an additional stage or something, maybe a couple alt skins or something like that, like a final Smash update that kind of encourages people to give that one final like push to play the game. And maybe they even have like a Smash Ultimate Complete Edition that it comes packaged with, you know, that final update in there with all of the DLC.
It could happen. I definitely think that they could do an update that literally just revamps the online, because literally everything about it kind of sucks. There's nothing about it's that good. There's like everything about it could be better. So
yeah, I mean,
go ahead and just fix everything about that.
The
please.
last few Smash matches I've done have been fine. The lag does come up, but it's far better than what it was back on Wii U. I'll tell you that. But for sure, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. Can't deny that either. Christopher Mendez, Nintendo will release the V2 Switch Lite before dropping the price from $199. Maybe.
I don't think there's gonna be a V2 Switch Lite. Maybe like a soft one, but like.
I do think there's gonna be another Switch Lite actually, because, well, it's a rumor, but the rumor is that Nvidia is done with the Tegra X1. So if they're done with that, they're gonna have to create another Switch Lite at some point. They may have a lot of in inventory or something, you know, but I could see another Switch revision coming out sometime next year that's a replacement for the Lite, or maybe the year after. It doesn't have to be like immediate, but I do feel like they could do that. Keep in mind that we got the 2DS. I don't think it will
be a separate thing though.
Very late into 3DS's life cycle. Like, I don't think the revision that's coming out this year is the last revision. There's gonna be a couple more.
There have been times, I mean, Sony did this even with the Vita, where they had, it's kind of like the opposite of what I expect, where they had OLEDs and then they took them out. It might be that they just come out with a version. We're not going to call it anything different. They didn't do the Vita either. It was just, this is how the Vita is now. This, like, sometimes Nintendo does that. This is just how the handhelds are now. They're better in some way, shape, or form. We're not changing them.
But you mean a quiet revision?
Yeah, quite
Yeah.
revision. I mean,
Yeah,
if
but it might even
Like
have
Americo.
It might even have different chipset in there.
Like
yeah,
like
I
the
mean,
Americo.
chips, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, it could be that. That's a good point. I mean, that makes sense because the Switch Lite as it is fine. Like it's, I feel like it's ideal for what it's supposed to be. So you could be right there.
Yeah.
But either way, it is a revision. It's just, is it going to be like a heavily marketed revision, right?
Yeah, I don't think it would be marketed.
Yeah. Daniel's Hot Topics. This is not a Zelda question, but coming this August, it is Metroid's 35th anniversary, correct? Do you think we may get a Metroid Prime trilogy for the Switch? I think we 100% will get a Metroid Prime trilogy, but do I think we'll get it this year for Metroid's 35th anniversary? I would love that. And I'll tell you that with this potential 4K revision coming out for the Switch, like you got to think that like a Prime trilogy in 4K seems ideal, right? Of course, supposedly this game's been done for a while. I don't know if they're going to go back and repurpose it to be in 4K. They may not. But I'll also tell you, Duma, with your idea, like maybe Breath of the Wild 2 isn't the launch title for the Switch revision. Maybe the Switch revision comes out a little bit earlier in the year. Breath of the Wild 2 saved for November. What if this revision comes out maybe September, right? Or maybe August in time for the Metroid anniversary, and they have a Metroid game come out around then. Perhaps Prime a 4K Prime trilogy? That would be pretty nice. So I'm not expecting that necessarily, but definitely I think that'd be pretty nice. I'll tell you though, I do believe there will be a Metroid game coming out this year. I'm not sure it'll be Prime Trilogy. That might be a next year thing. But there's going to be at least one Metroid game, and I am actually pulling for an August release. So we'll see what happens though. Let's see here. Okay. Ronnie Fazio, I hope the Monster Hunter Rise background music will be in more videos because it's beautiful. Isn't it beautiful? I may. We'll see.
It's not the only one. There's a lot of really good songs in this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot. Monster Hunter as a series is known for their music, and this one does not disappoint.
It's
So
very
good.
strong. I think it's
I love
better
the, like
than...
feudal Japan vibes.
I feel like the music
Yeah.
in this game is better than the ones I've played. Like,
So
Clearly.
good.
yeah.
I love the style.
Mm-hmm.
So many instruments you just don't usually hear. I think that's why I like these types of things, because there's just a lot of different, just like really unique instruments you just never hear in anything. But there's just a lot of like, I love it when games use like classic, like old instruments, like from the native peoples of wherever they are.
It's
And
a
just like
beautiful,
really crazy
beautiful
noises
culture.
that just have a really unique sound to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't usually hear.
Yeah, it's alien to us, and that's part of what makes it so magical, right? Moving on, though, iSonic added me. I know there's a possibility of exclusive games coming to this Pro version of the Switch, but how many do you think? I don't want I don't have a lot of money. I don't think there's going to be a lot. I think it's going to be few and far between. I think
Probably
there'll be
count them on your hand.
Maybe. Yeah, you might just be able to count them on your hand. Similar to the new 3DS. Now, the difference is with the new 3DS, they were actually like published Nintendo titles. I'm not personally expecting that. I can't confirm or deny that, though. My expectation is that there'll be a few third-party games that'll be exclusives, and they'll basically just be games that would not have been possible otherwise on the base Switch. And I'll suggest that maybe what they'll do is they'll have a cloud version for the base Switch instead. That way, players could have that at least as an option, but that's pretty much it. I think for the most part, you're probably gonna be fine with your base Switch.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit lately, and what I'm thinking of right now is the games that would be coming that are exclusive, unless Nintendo paid for them. It's games from companies that tried very, very hard to put it on the Switch and couldn't. So it's not like, oh well, that we're doing this now because it's an option. It's Nintendo has created the option for something we just couldn't quite make happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the non-Switch RE Engine games can make the jump over with an enhanced Switch. I wouldn't be surprised to see EA Sports titles end up coming over. and EA Sports titles would actually push the a Switch Pro pretty hard. And if they also happen to get that,
especially in Europe.
Yeah, and if they also happen to get that with a cloud version that is functioning properly and not horrible latency for the current Switch, I wouldn't be surprised if they do that either. But I think that's what we're going to be looking at if we are getting a bunch. It's going to be stuff that they almost could do on the Switch and already sunk a ton of money into, and it's something that Nintendo maybe didn't do in good faith, but it almost comes across as good faith, where it's like, we sunk all this money in to get this on the Switch and it's just not happening. And then Nintendo's like, well, we have this coming. Why don't you just optimize for that instead? And they'll be like, well, it's better than losing millions, even if we don't get the sales we want. You know, it's a way to get back some of the sales, like some of the cost of the game.
Yeah. You know, it'd be cool if the Switch revision had a SIM card slot. And basically, if you can get an unlimited tablet line, you just put that SIM card inside your Switch. That'd be great. Granted, this would be for the Switch revision, which would already be able to run the ports, so it wouldn't help base Switch owners. Because even if you have a cloud version, right, you can't really, if you don't have online on the go, like, you can't play it on the go. Granted, a lot of people have hotspots on their phones, so maybe some people can get away with that. But even then, most hotspots are not.
I think
unlimited.
With the rise of unlimited and 5G means in a couple of years it'll be fine. Because I think almost everybody seems to be moving towards unlimited now. In fact, it's pretty much just cheaper at this point almost.
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Yes, in the state, at least from where I live, in general, if you have some sort of family plan, you're better off just getting unlimited data. Yeah,
way better.
It's I don't know, Canada's sort of hit and miss with that. Like, we have fairly solid telecommunications. Our issue is that we also have the northern part of the country, which is not densely populated at all, and the companies service the north, and it costs a fair bit of money for not as much revenue in return. So
it makes sense.
If for that reason, the clumped up population in our country is along the U.S. border.
Yeah.
and so those big areas, like your Torontos and your Vancouvers and stuff like that, they're paying the same amount as people in like the northern part of the provinces in the country, and they're paying the same amount because it's also funding infrastructure in those parts of the country. So
well,
it's not quite there.
People being okay with paying more to help out other people in worse situations? What?
People aren't always okay with it.
For sure.
They're not always okay with it, but you don't have an option. It's, okay, you don't want to? Well, then you don't get a phone. You can have a landline, sir.
So, moving on with the chat, though. Let's see here. Evil Fantasy 7. I hope Breath of the Wild 2 is the darkest Zelda game. That would be so sick. I think it'll come out at the end of the year. I just hope it will run well on my regular Switch. I anticipate that it will run fine enough. I think it'll probably run about as well as Breath of the Wild ran. That's what I expect. Like,
which game? Breath of the Wild 2?
Yeah. I think it will it will certainly run better on the Switch revision, but I think there's no way that they're gonna have this game not run well enough on base Switch. Like, I
think it will run better on base Switch than the original game. Well, I'm of two positions. I think it may have frame drops in areas like more often, but I think there will be less drastic. Because the issue with Breath of the Wild is it's the way it's V-synced is it's double buffered, which means that if it's gonna drop even one frame, it will drop all the way down to 20 FPS and lock until it has to drop further. So, which it never does. But so like if you have areas like the Korok Forest, instead of being, in the high, like 27, 28, you're gonna see 20 all the time. So I'm assuming, and Nintendo doesn't double buffer VSync. It's like a really old thing. I'm assuming it was something because the Wii U, like most games don't do that anymore. So I'm assuming this game will, the sequel will be better. So you'll see less just sudden like lurches down. So it will be more consistent. You won't have that all of a sudden just complete drop off a cliff of fluidity that you do with Breath of the Wild.
I don't think it's gonna run perfectly because I think they're going to be pushing the system.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna push it like it's a Zelda. It's a big Zelda release. They push their consoles hard, but you're going to be getting more out of the game than you were when you were running into issues with Breath of the Wild, just because it is built for the Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just going to be much more optimized. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried. It'll be fine.
Let's hope it just smokes Monster Hunter as far as how it looks.
I think it's going to, which is crazy because Monster Hunter looks great.
I think it will be a much cleaner look, and that people in general will find it to be better. But I imagine it won't have as many technical nuances that Monster Hunter has.
I hear you there. I mean, I actually was playing Breath of the Wild a little bit for my video yesterday, and I was like, you know what? Brandon was right. Monster Hunter Rise is more impressive than Breath of the Wild.
Told you, bro. Yeah. I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. Like obviously not in terms of draw distance, right, or like the vastness of the world, but everything else.
In terms of small grain detail, like there's just more of it.
There's a lot. Yeah.
It's I really don't want to say which one is better or more impressive.
Monster Hunter Rise is more technically impressive.
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, I mean the physical. If you account for physics, maybe not, because the physics in Breath of the Wild is revolutionary.
True. That. Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
It's
again,
more the way they use the physics than the physics themselves, though.
Yeah, it's two very, very different games. I mean, one is multiplayer online, multiple people, which is mind blowing that it's not losing frames. The other one is this massive, like, open world single player freaking Wii U game that I don't know how the Wii U ran that is beyond me.
I don't know, man. That's why I'm saying like Breath of the Wild is not a good use of like it's not a good showcase because we haven't seen there's so much more potential. Like, that was a Wii U game, man.
But that's the one people point to for like what the Switch can do. I completely actually forgot about Luigi's Mansion.
Dude,
I didn't play it, but I watched it. It is beautiful. Oh man,
very beautiful game. I would have loved to have played that in 4K. Actually, that would have.
Maybe you'll get your chance.
Maybe I will.
I would like to see it in 60 FPS because I think with the I think it's 1080p or close, and it has anti-aliasing, so the image is actually pretty clean. But if it had 60 FPS, dude, that'd look so good. I'd actually prefer that over 4K for this particular title, just because especially since like a game like Breath of the Wild would upgrades, like you benefit so much more because you can see just so far. Details just become so small that having more pixels just means more details to be shown. Because you just can see so far away.
Yeah. So. I just want to say, Javier Vasquez was saying, the music playing in the background sounds extremely beautiful. Does anyone know from what game it belongs to? Gonna check the entire soundtrack. It is from Monster Hunter Rise. So
I saw somebody said Breath of the Wild, and I was like, nope.
Monster Hunter Rise, and the whole soundtrack isn't as chill as this, but the whole soundtrack is phenomenal.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Really good. There's some very hype battle soundtracks as well.
Every single monster has their own soundtrack. Has their own song, except for Kazu, which you get to make it even worse. You get no music for that beast.
Interesting. That's interesting.
They actually gave it a lore reason
horrifying.
Too. It's that thing is disgusting.
That thing looks like it should belong in the well in Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
But you know, I'm actually curious because I do think that Monster Hunter is going to be one of the bigger jumps for like up to 4K for DLSS. And I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about why some people might say Monster Hunter Rise looks bad. It's because it's very aliased. That's true. Like there's just a ton of aliasing just constantly on the screen at all times. It's just constant shimmer and flicker, and it covers a lot of detail. It looks distracting. Gameplay-wise, it's fine, but it looks distracting visually. And that's another reason why I think that Breath of the Wild can sometimes look better. It's a lot cleaner. It's less aliasing. It's less just pixels shimmering everywhere. But 4K DLSS has some of the best image quality, just period. Like, it has better anti-aliasing than the best stuff that's out right now. It's literally the best. So you're going from absolutely zero anti-aliasing to the best method we know of at the moment, other than offline rendering. And that's going to be a huge jump for a game with so much just fine detail. It's gonna make that look so much cleaner.
I mean, I'm excited to see this because Monster Hunter Rise has made grounded for the Nintendo Switch, and it looks amazing. I want to see some more ground up Switch games, or ground up Switch games that are made with 4K in mind. That's gonna be also impressive. I mean, Splatoon 3 looked pretty good from what we saw. I'm looking forward.
It can get better.
I mean, it's still early on.
Did you see those Twitter screen?
It's probably more than a year away.
Screenshots that are just super high resolution.
Those
those
exist
are
for
so good.
Splatoon 2 as well, though.
Yeah.
Okay. It's their marketing department. They do a great job of that. There's if you go back looking at Splatoon 2, the early days of Splatoon 2, you were getting 720p resolution images for when they were adding new weapons to the game. And then I don't know when it happened, but they started putting out 1080p versions instead.
I
actually use those for thumbnails. They're phenomenal.
After E3,
Beautiful.
When the game was first shown off, it was running at 720p, and then they took it up to a dynamic 1080p. The next time they showed it, which was like at E3 or something.
Yeah. One thing I'd also like to point out is oh, never mind, just lost it. Just keep going.
Happens to me all the time.
It's been a long day.
I believe Birdman wants me to make the point that Rise won't go to other consoles because they paid for exclusivity. Yeah, they had timed exclusivity. It'll come to PC, but I don't think it's going to be going to PlayStation or Xbox. Yeah. So if you want to play Monster Hunter Rise, probably want to just get it for your Switch.
Okay, so that's the thing I was going to say is like back when World came out and the Switch came out, and everyone was like wanting World on the Switch and asking Capcom went, we could, but we'd rather just, do a ground up game. Wouldn't you rather a ground up game? At this point in time, yes.
Yeah.
It was a long wait.
It was a long
It was a long wait, and people were like, "Wow, we want World because World's so amazing." We got Rise, and
yeah, but
I will
version
take
of World is not going to be as amazing.
I will take Rise any day over. Not so much World. I think there's such different games. I personally like Rise more, but if you like World Iceborne more, like I can understand that. But on the Switch, I would much rather Rise as it is now than a port and them trying to force it to work.
Yeah,
World would have been a blurry mess.
It would have been like 540p docked.
No, I wouldn't have wanted that. No,
it's just...
Or they would have had to cut out a ton of vegetation.
You're never going to get the same performance and stuff out of a game that you have to scale down than a game that you make ground up, because every single asset is made with a Switch in mind. There's different techniques that look similar but run so much better. Maybe they don't look as good, but they look good enough instead of a very low quality version of the other effect that's more expensive that actually ends up looking worse.
And it also like it's such a basic thing, like the map design is completely different. Which is why we have Leviathans, because Leviathans didn't exist in World because they couldn't handle the physics of the World style of maps. So like they completely changed the maps. That's why we have like our maps, our areas that we fight in have wide open spaces. It's so that Leviathans can be there and it doesn't completely destroy the system to try to run it.
Oh man!
So
there aren't Leviathans in World. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, they couldn't get it. They showed it off originally with Legiacris, which is a huge.
The lightning Leviathan.
Yeah, and it. So everyone was really disappointed when they didn't get them, and what it turned out, apparently there was even a group of people on the team that, as a side project, took it on themselves because they wanted the Leviathans in so bad. They were having problems with the body and the clipping of the maps and having it make sense. And then with the physics, and it was apparently like crashing the game. Like the system, the CPU just couldn't handle it, and they couldn't find a way around it. But again, now we can get into Monster Hunter, whatever the 6th gen is, and they can look at that and be like, okay, well now we can redesign our maps with Leviathans in mind, so that was okay. Leviathans are going to be in these areas, so we need this style of map. So it's
like you can still have close corridor areas, but you have to exactly the monsters can't go to
Yeah.
every part of the game. That makes sense.
yeah. So it's again, like everything from the ground up was designed, from the map designs, the theme, everything for the Switch. The theme, again, don't think this Japanese theme was like just a random whim. It's like,
No.
we're coming back to the Switch. World sold the best out of any Capcom game ever. It did not break Monster Hunter's record in Japan. So this is going to crush that record in Japan. And don't think it was a coincidence that this one just happened to be Japanese based locale,
To
when
appeal
the
to
last
the
one
East.
that holds the record was the same. There's very Japanese aesthetic to it. So this was all very, very planned out.
I'll tell you that as an American, I would not be excited about an Americanized like Legend of Zelda or something. It's like, oh, there's a cheeseburger restaurant. No, that's not
No.
gonna make me excited.
That's because
But at
America
the same-
has the worst culture in the world.
But at the same time, it's like, how far back does the culture go that you're fully connected to in North
Oh
America?
wait, well
Now, like,
actually, you know,
granted,
if
if
it did
you're-
like a Native American sort
Yeah.
of thing, that might
Yeah.
be
yeah,
really
very
interesting.
native theme.
Like
That would be
like
really
with the
cool.
spirits and stuff. Oh, dude, actually, you know what?
Native American culture is so cool.
That might
They
be
have-
really
Yeah.
interesting. Or if
Like-
you do like,
like-
actually, you know what? Like some of like the Sheikah
So
stuff is
excited.
very like very Aztec-like or Mayan-like.
Yeah. Yep,
Okay,
and it's
alright.
very cool.
All right, you know.
So like
Yeah.
again, like but I don't know of any like
Actually, I
Aboriginal
wouldn't mind a
Japanese culture. So
cheeseburger.
Japanese culture, when we're looking back, like the history goes back how far? And it's super interesting all through like
Yeah.
feudal Japan and all that stuff, like super interesting. And then when we're looking at like North America, it's like, okay, we start going back into the culture as far as we remember it, and it's like, yeah, that's not that great. And then it's like, oh, wait a second. Then we hit like Native American
Yeah.
legends and
Before
spirits
we came
and
and ruined everything.
yeah, and suddenly it like things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. There's,
I mean,
there's
Raji
things.
is an example of a game on Switch that explores more unique,
Oh, perfect.
uh,
Perfect.
yeah.
I love that game.
more unique lore. So
Yeah.
Native American stuff would be awesome.
There's some really interesting stuff in there too. like,
Done right, of course.
people don't
Done
really
right.
talk about too often, but they have some really cool legends. I would love to see a Native American legend sort of game. That'd be so good.
Man,
That'd
that's,
be amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's. I'd be down for that. I want to address the cheeseburger thing. If there was a way to make a cheeseburger with the cooking mechanics in Breath of the Wild, I actually probably wouldn't be that upset. That'd be fine.
It'd be funny.
Yeah. But let me get to the chat here. We're gonna close the podcast out really soon, guys. Let's see here. Ronnie Fazio Adamy, are you gentlemen Puyo Puyo or Tetris men? I recently bought Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 for my Switch. I'm kind of leaning towards Puyo Puyo. I'm a big Tetris guy, but I also gotta say that I haven't given Puyo Puyo enough attempts to really say that for sure I don't like it. Like I'm just a big Tetris person. I really enjoy Tetris, but I'm down to play Puyo Puyo as well.
Not so much into either, but there is
Same.
one person on my server that was looking to go competitive in Puyo Puyo.
Wow.
I've never even played Puyo Puyo. Obviously, I've played
I-
Tetris, because if you haven't played Tetris, what rock are you living under?
Yeah.
Download it on your cell phone right now. Like, jeez.
Or how-
But no, I'm not a big fan of either of them either. I like them, or at least Tetris. I haven't played Puyo, but it looks cool. I like
Tetris
it,
is-
but I don't really play it a ton.
The
Tetris
first
is
Game Boy game-
dangerously addicting, and that's why I stay away from it.
Tetris
I like
is the
Tetris.
first
It's one of
those
Game
things
Boy game
it's-
I ever played.
It's so 99. It's one of those
Yeah.
things. I sat down. I'm like, I'll check this out, and like 4 hours later, I'm like, okay, this needs to
Yes.
never be played
Tetris
again.
99
Yeah.
can take up a lot of my time.
Tetris is one of
it's
those
great.
games I get addicted to one day, and the next day I never think about it again.
Interesting.
There's a lot of games, like a lot of small, like simpler games like that, and a lot of cell
Yeah,
phone
oh, yeah.
games. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
is the best game. I play it. I'm like on it literally all day checking. I'll be like that for 2 or 3 days, maybe a week at most, and I'll be like, okay, never touching this game again. Delete.
So Joshua
I'm not gonna
Ayers,
think about this game anymore.
I honestly think this Breath of the Wild 2 Ganondorf is a Twilight Princess Ganondorf. I can say with
Seems to be.
almost, maybe I shouldn't say 100% certainty, but I am very confident that it is the same Ganondorf because throughout most of Zelda lore, Ganondorf is Ganondorf. There's only one Ganondorf, but one game, which is 4 Swords, but even then, the spirit of Ganondorf is still in there as well. So yeah, every time you see Ganondorf in a game, Ganondorf it's the same guy, same dude. Just he's a magical wizard imbued with the power of the Triforce of Power and dark magic, so he can survive for many, many lifetimes. And that's why probably partially why he's coming back to life in the trailer. Even the legend of Breath of the Wild is about Ganon failing after many attempts to take over Hyrule in humanoid form. So Breath of the Wild 2 is showing us where the humanoid form was abandoned. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same one. It even has a scar in the chest from Twilight Princess. Yeah,
because we know it's the same Ganondorf, but we think it's the Twilight Princess one specifically, like that timeline.
That
because
timeline.
of that.
Yeah, that exactly. Let's see, moving on here. Swifter1243 had an interesting question. Do we think Nintendo will hold off on Breath of the Wild 2 news at E3 out of fear of overshadowing Skyward Sword? No. No. Well, hold on. I think the thing is, though, I think the argument can be made that perhaps Nintendo would wait until they have Skyward Sword come out and then do a direct after that. So maybe August, right? Maybe they could do an August direct and have us wait a real long time. I don't think that's happening, though. I don't think they need to do that. I don't think it really overshadows it. They have 2 very different styles of gameplay. I think it'd be fine. So I'm not really concerned
Skyward Sword
about
was
that.
already announced. All they really need to talk about now is small quality of life changes, not telling me what type of bug I picked up and the fact that I just picked up a 5 rupee, even though it was only because I turned the game off.
They could even do a thing where what if
so annoying.
What if if you have a save file of Skyward Sword HD on your Switch, when you play Breath of the Wild 2, you unlock a Loftwing early on or something. Something like that. Just to encourage
customizations for them or something.
That would prefer that, because I prefer if Loftwings are in Breath of the Wild 2, I would want that to be found way later into the game, not really early on. But
Loftwing armor.
Oh, that'd be neat. Yeah. Something like that.
So you do little things.
Yeah, you can do little things to encourage
sure.
play between both.
Again, it's less about. So one thing, a comment they made back in 2017 that they keep trying to use, and they made the connection that things like their mobile games were reaching other audiences, and it was blowing up other games. So when Sun and Moon came out, it was right after the craze of Pokemon Go, when that blew off. And then they had a couple others. Mario had Run, and then afterwards had really strong sales. And so they wanted to keep trying to do that. So it's less that they're waiting to not overshadow Skyward Sword, and more that Skyward Sword they want out and paced to get people's mind back on Zelda, and people looking at Zelda to then be like, here's something amazing you need. So it's more of it's almost like a marketing that pays for itself. And it's marketing that makes them money.
Also, if Breath of the Wild 2 comes out in November, people are going to buy it. I don't think Skyward Sword would slow that down.
Well, I think they're thinking the opposite, that Breath of the Wild would
that people would not buy Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
I think that's
here's
really
the other thing,
happen.
though. If they say in Skyward Sword, there could be some clues and hints to Breath of the Wild 2, that encourages people to play Skyward Sword to sort of tie things over until Breath of the Wild 2. So there's that to consider. Of course, some people may argue that because Skyward Sword is coming out this year, that they don't think Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year. That's a whole other debate, though. But either way, I think you can still talk about Breath of the Wild 2 before Skyward Sword comes out. I mean, they're talking about Monster Hunter Stories that's coming out in a few months, and we just got Monster Hunter Rise. Another example, they showed off both Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Like these are all very similar things. I don't think
Now
it's an
that
issue.
said, I basically left that presentation, and someone's like, "So what do you think of the remakes?" I'm like, "What remake?"
Remakes?
Like, I saw Legends. I don't care about anything else.
But I'm still gonna buy the
Yeah.
remakes. I'm still gonna buy and play them. Like that's happening.
I'm up in the air at this point.
I think the people who are going to buy Skyward Sword are going to buy Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Like the dedicated fans, they're gonna buy them. And if you're going to be overshadowed by Breath of the Wild for Skyward Sword, you're probably not into Skyward Sword anyways. You're probably into Breath of the Wild type gameplay and not what Skyward Sword is gonna offer.
The other thing is,
point.
again, we can circle this one back to Monster Hunter. What does a new Monster Hunter game do? It sells old Monster Hunter games. Because what happens when you're done all the content? You want to see what was before it. So all those people that played Breath of the Wild 2 and thought it was the greatest thing ever is like, okay, well, if they didn't play Breath of the Wild, they have to play that. And if they didn't play Skyward Sword, they're gonna have to play that. And they'll be going back, and it's very likely that they go back to Skyward Sword because it's very recent. So you can use games to sell each other. It's not like, okay, so maybe Skyward Sword doesn't get the same sales that it could have at launch, but then after some time has passed with Breath of the Wild 2, people are going to want more Zelda. They always want more Zelda. That's why this series is still alive. So they will be willing to go back and buy Skyward Sword afterwards just to check out older games and what else was in the franchise and get the lore, especially when you start talking about where it falls in the storyline. It's definitely something that they can sell it afterwards as well. It is probably going to be one of those evergreen titles, even if it isn't one of those evergreen titles that's over 10 mil.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
it's not
that
like they're releasing close together. They're just talking about them close together.
Well, here's the thing though. So I feel confident in saying that Breath of the Wild 2 will be shown off probably in June, right? I think we kind of all seem to agree on that. Skyward Sword's a July thing. Like, I'm just going to talk about Zelda all at once. But then after that, the question is, when does Breath of the Wild 2 come out? I've been sticking with November, but I'll say that gap, while I feel like it's long enough, I can see how some people might think that maybe Nintendo will wait a few more months before they release Breath of the Wild 2. I don't think so, but, definitely possible.
I think it's plenty of time in between.
Yeah. We're, again, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Legends Arceus, late 2021, early 2022. Very similar situation. Moving on here, I think we're pretty much done. Oh, some final things here. Got some final ads. Aaron Curdy, do you think the mummy from Breath of the Wild 2 is Astor? No, that's Ganondorf.
No. Yeah, it's Ganon.
Yeah. He has the golden jewel and the scar and the Gerudo colors, everything. It's Ganondorf. Now, Javier added me. Andres, do you remember that Malladus, the so-called Demon King from Spirit Tracks, was very much a successor of Ganondorf after he got killed at the end of the Wind Waker? Since Malladus is basically Ganondorf 2.0 and Breath of the Wild takes place at the end of all three times, it's possible that Breath of the Wild Ganondorf got reincarnated. Well, that's taking place in the Wind Waker timeline. The scar on the chest of Ganondorf is suggesting a Twilight Princess timeline, so it'd be a separate thing.
It's also, Malladus was a complete change. This is very much still the same.
It's a Gerudo.
And also to say, it's like which timeline Breath of the Wild is in. They left it open enough as it is. And especially with the confusion between the versions and what the Japanese version said versus what was said when it was localized. And Nintendo, as we've seen in the past, can turn around and make it any timeline they want afterwards.
They can. Yep. I do think there's decent evidence for the Twilight Princess timeline, but either but either way, like, it's so far into the future, does it really matter? Also, Malladus is not nearly as cool as Ganondorf, I would say. So, I'm pretty sure there's like almost no debate. It's definitely Ganondorf. Now, you can debate, is it a reincarnation? Maybe, but most of the time when Ganondorf has appeared in the game, it's the same guy. Same guy.
You don't reincarnate with the same injuries. Like, he still has the giant gaping hole in his chest.
No, yeah, I think that
like,
that's more of a.
I think
nod
if
to
you
the-
had
the
reincarnated, you
loss.
might have healed that up a bit, you know.
Yeah.
You think about it.
Yeah, maybe this is the new style.
Maybe.
This is what defines who I am.
Yeah.
Birdman.
What will I
Adam.
be without a hole in my chest?
Nintendo hasn't probably shown off the full details for Skyward Sword HD. Maybe there will be more content for Skyward Sword HD. I mean, there's amiibo support. I'm not
Possibly.
expecting new content necessarily, because if you put in let's say you put in like an extra area or something, at that point, then yeah, there probably is no Breath of the Wild 2 this year, because I don't think you do that. But maybe we'll see. I mean, it could be something subtle that just kind of, again, maybe connects Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword potentially. iSonic added me. I feel like the DLC of Age of Calamity might have a meaning, mainly the May purchase bonus date. Maybe they give us a tie into Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, like armor, weapons, the green hand. Well, if they are going to show off the trailer, I'm believing a shadow drop in June, which is when the first wave is coming out. Maybe they do reveal some Breath of the Wild 2 stuff in that trailer after they have a Breath of the Wild 2 blowout. Yeah, it's conceivable. I do feel like Breath of the Wild 2 might be saved for the end, so timing-wise there might be something off there. But maybe in Wave 2 there could be some Breath of the Wild 2 nods potentially.
It would be. I don't see them doing like pulling moves from the next game, like having the green hand powers or something, because it does kind of have to make sense within the lore in this game. It can't. It's not like the original. Zelda Warriors game. It's not like that. It's not like where you can just throw in anything and make it make sense with like teleportation or something ridiculous. It has to kind of make sense within the lore. So if he just all of a sudden has powers from the second game, that'd be weird, I think.
I see an interesting little theory here that some people have already noted from Aiden DeSouza. I hope I got your name correct. Is the green energy connected to courage, the blue Sheikah energy connected to wisdom, and Mal's connected to power?
Ooh.
It fits. It definitely
We haven't
fits.
seen the Triforce really barely at all in Breath of the Wild.
It makes sense though for them to start talking about it, because if they're gonna have Ganondorf re-enter there, it's all of a sudden a trio again. So
Yeah.
you know, I think there's something to this idea. And like you said, Brandon, they didn't discuss a Triforce. That's another thing they can sort of revisit with and expand it with a more or a better told story in Breath of the Wild too. So
They didn't even really
understand.
understand what the Triforce was. It seemed like that lore was like lost to time almost.
Yeah.
They were like, it just happened. They were like, I have powers that you saw the Triforce. They never said anything about it. It was like they didn't even know what it was.
This is
Did they
definitely
even
a
name
video.
it at any point in time?
No, they never name drop it.
No, but the Triforce does come out of Zelda at the end, but she loses her powers at the end of the game. So perhaps in Breath of the Wild 2, a big storyline there is Zelda recovering her powers, which very easily can tie into a story connecting to 3 different Triforce pieces: the wisdom from Zelda, the courage from Link, and the power from Ganondorf. This all kind of makes a lot of sense, honestly. So I definitely think there's something there. I'm probably making a video on it. Like that is, yeah. There's something there.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. Joshua Ayers, remember the armless Link concept? Yeah, you're right. There was that could link to potentially, like hookshot-like mechanics or something like that. That'd be very cool for sure. But I don't know. I we've hit the 3-hour mark. I think we're good. I think it's time to call it a night. I'll just have a couple closing thoughts. I look forward to what may happen next week, as I usually do every week, because there's always going to be something to sort of look at, get excited about, extrapolate, speculate, discuss. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure we'll get Zelda news later this year. I think a Switch revision is coming. As I have been thinking for a while, there may be another Bloomberg report, as there has been like every week. So we'll see with that. And Monster Hunter Rise is really, really good. You guys should definitely check it out. There's a demo. You can at least try that out first. It's fun. I honestly think even this early on that it really is one of the best Switch games. I'm very excited.
With the demo, if you can't beat Magnum Hollow, don't worry about it, because it's not going to. If like
If you can
Your-
beat him,
your to-
holy crap, you are skilled.
Yeah, like the demo monsters are scaled up and the hunters are scaled down, and then Magnamalo has that as well, but it's a 15-minute timer. Generally, you can take your time with a monster. This is like a forced speed run.
It's just
So
a fun little
it's-
challenge they had.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that are veterans of the series that didn't complete it, so don't worry about that. Like it is easier in game, and there is progression to get you to these harder fights. You're not just thrown into this nightmare. So
Even the
I
intermediate
understand
one
that.
is hard. Like,
Yeah,
especially if you're new,
yeah.
like you're gonna get
Mizutsune
destroyed.
moves. It's hard to track down Mizutsune's movements. So it
The
like
laser when it's drifting all over the
pretty
place,
cool.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
why
there
you
are
do the
other
mission.
monsters. Rathian's not like Rathian's pretty tough, but
Not
decent
insane.
monster. Azeros again, a lot tougher than it used to be, but still pretty good. Great Azuchi is kind of a pushover, so you shouldn't
Yeah.
start with Great Azuchi and go from there and just kind of learn the feel of the game. And again, commitment. It's about commitment.
Commitment, timing. Don't mash. Always be thinking about literally every button you press.
Man,
Yeah.
you guys keep putting in questions. We're supposed to end the podcast. Yeesh. Jeez. PLC plays. I gotta get to the question. Do you think there's a more powerful side of the Triforce, and why? Well, there's the Triforce of
What?
power. I'll also say that Zelda's power with the Triforce was extraordinary at the end of Breath of the Wild. I would like to see that explored more. So I don't know if there's... I think there's more to explore with it, and I think they haven't fully taken advantage of it. So if you want to think of that as a more powerful side, then sure. But I think it's more of a, we just don't know the full details of what it's capable of.
Might as well ask what the most powerful Infinity Stone is.
Yeah. Birdman's asking, when does the Q&A for Nintendo Financial Report come out? April 8th? I don't know the specific date, actually, but I'll look into that. Yeah. But we shall see what happens, guys. But anyways, I think that's all for now. Make sure to check out both Dumo's and Brandon's channels. They are linked in the description below. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Just excited to play more Monster Hunter. It's nice actually caring about the series now.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna play a little Monster Hunter after this.
Yep. I'm
So,
probably going to do that to eat something and
be
play
good
Monster
times.
Hunter. Yeah.
I'm
All right,
supposed to be
guys.
making content for Monster Hunter, but I'm too busy playing the game, so I don't know.
It's tough.
It'll happen eventually.
Good stuff. The more you play, the better. The more you'll have to sort of say later on.
Yep.
All right, guys. If you do want to see more Monster Hunter, you should definitely check out Dumo's channel, though. So it's
Thanks.
linked in the description below. But yeah, have a good night. Take care.
See you
Bye.
guys.